Let me know once it's ready, Whitney.
You're good to go.
Awesome. Thank you. Good evening. It's 7 o'clock. I call the meeting to order for the Park and Rec Commission. And the first one is a pledge of allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with the liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Hello, Whitney, would you mind for a roll call, please?
Yes. Chair Kumarapan,
Present.
Vice Chair Stanek,
Here.
Commissioner Begor,
Yes.
Commissioner Shu,
I'm here.
and Commissioner Tombe.
Here.
Great. All are present. Thank you. And the first one is the ceremonial matters and presentations. And the item number 1 we have is the subject on receiving email phishing campaign presentation from our CTO, Bill Mitchell. Please.
Commissioners, thank you very much for this opportunity to present a very timely and extremely important topic to you today, cybersecurity. If you give me just a second, I'll share my presentation with you. Let me know if you see that.
Yes.
Okay, great. So again, what we're going to be talking to today is cybersecurity, specifically these 4 items. We're going to talk about the cyber threat landscape that the city is falling under these days, specifically ransomware. And we'll talk a little bit about what the city's cybersecurity defense is. However, I will not go into any of the products that we utilize because that would be unwise of us to kind of say what our defenses are at this time. And then I'll end up with some questions. So first, let's talk about the cyber threat landscape. Every day, a new threat emerges in the cyber world. City of Cupertino is like every other government entity. We are constantly being attacked from all sides. On a weekly basis, we normally get anywhere from a few hundred to several thousand attacks on the network itself. And what I mean by that is we get folks that are trying to guess our passwords, throwing phishing campaigns, or just trying to break into our networks. So here's the main ones that we face. These are man in the middle, denial of service, SQL injection, zero-day exploit, DNS tunneling, which probably means absolutely nothing to you. But what I want to concentrate on today is malware and phishing. So malware is nothing more than malicious code. So malicious code is written by hacking entities to either steal something from you or disrupt operation. So malware, malicious code, needs a vehicle to get into your system. One of the more common these days are phishing emails, which looks like a legit email, ask you to either send information, click on an attachment, or go to a link. And that's phishing email. Phishing plus malware equals ransomware. So just for the state of the city, of course, we always need stats in a PowerPoint presentation. So here's our stat. For 2020, you can see what country is the largest target, United States. By far, probably about 53% of all attacks are towards the United States. Let's do it by industry. You'll notice that government accounts for about 13% to 14% of all hacking attacks, any ransomware attacks that there are. Manufacturer is number 1. So let's talk about government. Why is government there? It's because we're a soft target. And what I mean by that is we, through transparency, publish a lot of our information that hackers would need to actually put together a good phishing campaign. So we give them our email addresses. We let them know who our vendors are, and we give them our day-to-day operations. So they know a lot about us already. They don't have to do a lot of legwork to find that out. So that's why governments are attacked. Manufacturing is attacked. I've had that question before. And the reason for that is, remember I said you're either stealing or you're disrupting services? Well, manufacturing, they're looking at slowing supply chain. Manufacturing is a huge target. If you can go in there and slow down their operations, you're doing well. This week, Garmin was attacked. You probably saw that in the paper, and Garmin chose to pay the ransomware. So successful attacks so far this year. This is this year on some cities. There are Bay Area cities that have been hit, but they're not published, and I'm not going to let you know what those are. I'll leave that up to them to come out. But these are the main ones. The last two are the ones I want to talk about. So Knoxville, Tennessee was hit a few weeks back. They still are negotiating ransomware. So their operations have been down for weeks. What ransomware does is it goes in there and encrypts all your files and puts a lock on it, meaning you have no access to any of your services, zero. To get it back, what the ransomware folks will do is they'll say, you pay us a ransom and we will uncrypt that data for you, and then you have it back. Recently, a couple of weeks ago, you may have noticed that UCSF, University of California, San Francisco, was hit. They paid a $1.14 million ransom. Cities our size, the beginning ransom rate is about $300,000 to $400,000. So let's talk about what our cyber defense is. So the city of Cupertino invests heavily on cyber defense. We probably spend hundreds of thousands of dollars every year on cyber defense. However, we have this guy over here, human error. We call him Dave. So Dave can thwart all of our efforts by simply clicking on the wrong thing. So what do we do? Well, what is the city trying to do? So probably in the last couple of months, you've been hit by a bunch of phishing emails going, wait a minute, I didn't get a speeding ticket. And I don't know, I don't bank at your bank. Those emails are actually created by us, by my team. What we're doing is we're looking for folks that may fail a phishing campaign and then provide the education to ensure that they don't do that in the future. So it's just training and notification. So we let you know where you stand if you fail. If you fail, you are automatically enrolled in a remedial training for cybersecurity. With COVID-19 today, what you'll find out is phishing attacks have increased 4 or 5-fold, right? So what we're seeing is people are stressed out, they're anxious, they're working from home. Sometimes they're letting their guard down a little bit. So the perfect thing right now is to send out an email saying, here's some important COVID information, please click on this. People click on it, you've now infected your computer. Your computer can talk to our computers, so now you're infecting our computers as well. So I want to give you a big hint. If you're expecting mail from staff, this is staff that work for the city of Cupertino, it will not have this yellow banner. This yellow banner says the email is originating from outside the organization. You may receive that sometimes, and it could be legit. A perfect example is your Zoom invite today had this banner because that comes from Zoom, which is outside our organization. So what you really need to do, you really need to look into the email, verify the user, someone that you know or you're expecting to send you something. And it's always wise, if you're not expecting an attachment from someone, don't open it. Just don't open it. If you're not expecting a link from someone, don't open it. What we do prefer that you do is you send it to our help desk at helpdesk@cupertino.org. My team will look at it. If it's valid, they'll send it back to you. If it's invalid, they'll give you congratulations for finding fish, and we move on. So where do we stand today? So this is our phishing campaign over the last 6 months, and we're getting better. So if you notice, the industry average of people that are prone for a phishing attack is 30% of staff. So 30% of staff is bad, obviously, right? 3.8% much better, but it's still bad. 3.8% could be 12 folks in the city of Cupertino. Again, I only need one Dave. I only need one Dave to click on the wrong thing to infect our files. So it's incumbent upon you to really be careful on what you're opening up on email. So we have a mission for you. And unfortunately, this is one that you cannot not accept. And that's to become that cyber hero. We want you to go out there, be very, very careful on what emails you're opening, ensuring that it's valid. And if you have any questions, send it to Cupertino, at helpdesk@cupertino.org. So before questions, I'll leave you with one thing, and this is a Mike Tyson quote. He said, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth, right? So think of Mike Tyson as a hacker. What he's saying is, you may have the best plan in the world until I attack you, and then you don't, right? So what we do, and we follow Mike Tyson's rule here, is we train and we train and we train. So those very annoying phishing emails, which I get them, my staff gets them, we don't like them, but we understand why we're doing it. What we want to do is that it's so embedded in your mentality that you see an email, you're checking it, and you know, hey, this is phish, and I'm going to pass it on. Okay, with that, any questions that you may have?
Great. Thank you, Bill Mitchell. This is great. This is very informative, especially at this kind of time. Very timely. Appreciate it.
You bet.
So, and I think I would like to open up for the commissioners in case if you have any clarification questions to Bill Mitchell, please. And I don't see the rising. Oh, I can see the rising hand comes. I think Commissioner Nisha Tampe, I think I see yours first, please.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking time to chat with us. And, I think making sure that we don't get hit by Mike Tyson as he's done to people in outside the ring is also good.
Yeah.
I was wondering, is there any, in terms of just city staff security, like are we thinking of doing what Google did, which is like bringing in security keys to prevent phishing? Because like they haven't, I think since they implemented security keys, they haven't had any successful phishing attempts for their like 85,000 employees? Or do we think that because the 3.8 is it's such a low percentage is probably not relevant or necessary for us at this time?
You know what? The city invests in all types of cybersecurity methods. I'm not sure what you're talking about with what Google did. Can you talk about that just a little bit more?
Yeah, there are these things called a YubiKey. It's a YubiKey.
Oh yeah, okay. I'm familiar with what you're talking about there. Yeah. So we don't right now. Part of it is the cost of it, but the other one is we think we can get the remediation through for the most part through the education and the products that we currently have.
Okay.
The problem with cybersecurity is this: is as soon as someone creates something to stop cybersecurity, the hackers beat it. And I'll give you a couple of examples for that. So the way that ransomware used to work, and still does in some cases, is as I infect a system, I just go full out and encrypt as many files as I can, as fast as I can. So someone came up with a great idea saying, well, why don't we have AI develop what the normal pattern of writes are to your directory, and when you see something outside that, an anomaly, stop it. Great idea. That was in the market maybe a few months, and it's already been beaten. So what the hackers are doing now is they have a time clock. They slow it down. You know, they know if they're going to hit you at 2 o'clock in the morning, they have hours before they have to do anything, or they hit you on the weekend. Another one was backups. So what you'll hear is ransomware is that backups are your solution. Not necessarily. So the good hackers out there, what they'll do is they'll infect your computer, but they have a time clock on there that says, you know what? Don't go off. Don't go off until 2 months. But what happens is you're backing up that malicious code. And I restore that file. I'm good, and then it goes again. And it keeps triggering. So you're in this loop, and you have to go, and backups are normally for us, it's every 15 minutes. So think about how many iterations back we'd have to go to find a good backup, especially if it's months long. So we're always looking at new solutions and new methods. But that one we haven't looked at very, very hard at this point.
Okay, great. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I work in tech, and I do a lot of work with security startups. So I'm decently familiar with, not completely, not as much of an expert as you, but I know that at least the security keys, since they installed them in 2017, haven't had phishing attempts. So hopefully we'll be fine. I'm sure that with education, our city staff will be well, and the rest of us will be well versed.
Yeah.
But thank you very much. I think this is super important. So really appreciate your time.
You bet. You bet.
Thank you. I think I have Commissioner Carroll raised hand with questions.
Hi,
please.
yes, thank you. So one question I had is, when we first got our city email addresses, I guess within a short amount of time, we were invited to our initial training for cybersecurity. And that in particular came from outside the network. And being the novice, before you're trained, you click on it, and I went through, and it was a really great program. And then I thought, oh my God, I never should have gotten here.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, and now I'm so much better. I really appreciate the training. It was good, but those, I don't know what is Beware or whatever the name is. Those always come from outside the network.
Yeah, that's KnowBe4, and they're an outside entity that trains just like Zoom. So it's an outside entity. So we are working with KnowBe4 to be able to brand that under our own branding so that people would go, okay, this is legit. It's from the city of Cupertino. But you're right. But what we like is when people go, hey, I have this and I need to be trained. Is this legit? And we tell them, yeah, it is. Great job. Right. So, yeah.
Right. But I would think every time they do an update, yeah, you don't want everyone in the whole organization having to send that email back to check on it. And so I'm just wondering if it can be forwarded. I just thought that would be an efficiency thing. And I just thought it was very ironic that that was the one that it came from outside, and it was okay. So I am surprised. I'm actually shocked at how much spam and phishing we get. Since I've seen it through this email account that I have with the city, and the ones that really looked good and I asked about was the one that says it's from HR and it's about new COVID regulations or coming back to work, and those look so good. And the thing that saved me on that was that banner that said this is coming from outside the network, and so now I just delete those, and because it looks like it's coming from HR. Even if you hover over the from address, it looks like it's HR. It's only if you say pretend to do a reply, and then you can look at where the reply is actually going, that you can see that it's not at cupertino.org. So anyway, I've learned a lot, and I'm a lot more careful, and I appreciate that.
Good. We're very happy that you're being vigilant.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. So I do see Commissioner Shashi.
Yeah, quick question. Do we get updates, updated training? Because I've only done that once, the KnowBe4. I haven't received an update since, but I've only been here since January, so I'm not sure if
we try to do a refresher once a year where we're rolling out one. IT is reviewing one now called Cybersecurity Tips from Home. So my team is beating that up right now, and once we've done with it, we'll be sending it out to the rest of the organization. So that'll probably be within the next month.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. And let me see, no other commissioners have any questions. So I do have two questions to you, Paul. One, I see a lot of emails, like exactly what Commissioner Carroll said. I noticed it as HR@cupertino.org, but it is impersonating. When I go and click onto it, that email and then look at where the sender headers, then you see that it is impersonating from something else. But it is coming as HR@cupertino.org, and I thought it's a very valid one. That's how you see it first, but it is actually doing it. Is those things can be filtered by the team already? Because it attaches a Cupertino.org as a from address. Is there a way to match it and filter it so that we don't even get it? Is that?
We can filter that, but we created that to test you.
I see. Okay.
That's from us.
You want to test us whether we are really doing the good job or not and following the rules? Okay.
That's actually most of the fish that you're getting these days are from us. Is from my team, right? So they develop phishing campaigns and they send those out all the time.
I see. Okay. Now I get it clear. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Because I was always wondering, I think this seems to be an easy one to fix it and why. But that's all internally generated. Train us to make sure that we don't click it. Yeah, that's why I even click when it came from Joanne. And I said, no, I'm not going to click it. No, I'm just kidding. So that's the first question. Second is, this is good for us, but I think at this current situation, this is needed for everyone in the city, right? Community needs to know something about it because people are at it, especially seniors, and others are much more needed because everything is through phone and they may not have all those. Mm-hmm. Do we have any plans to expand this training or the awareness to the our community as a whole? And
we can. About 2 years ago, we did a cybersecurity training. Actually, I think it was last year. We did cybersecurity training that was held at Community Hall. We had a good representative from the community that showed up. Okay. But it's timely to keep refreshing this, and we may put this on our website just as a training video so people could watch it and understand, this is what you need to be looking for.
Excellent. Thank you. Appreciate it. I think sorry, go ahead. You want to add something?
At the end of the day, some of it is common sense, right? If you're not expecting an email from someone, and the other thing right? No one that should be asking will ask for a social security number, will ask for your user ID and password, will ask for your bank account. None of that stuff is legit. No one legit will ask you that stuff over email, right? So trash that stuff as soon as you see it. Just dump it.
Sure, absolutely will. Thank you. And now I see Commissioner Mina has some questions. Please. I think you're on mute. I'm trying to unmute.
Well, thank you for the presentation. And I just have one question. I heard the spam email and the phishing email are different. So most mail server can filter the spam, but for phishing, it's very hard to filter it. Is this information correct?
That is correct. So spam email, you can pretty much, a lot of spam filters can, kick out probably 90% of the email spam that's out there. So even though you may get a plethora email in your Cupertino box, you're probably 1/10 of the email that we receive. The majority of the email we receive as an organization is junk, and we take care of it. We filter that out. So spam is just junk email. It's somebody trying to sell you a magazine. It's, hey, here's the newest cure for COVID. And they just tell you, drink quinine water. That's spam. The difference between spam and phishing emails want you to implant malicious code onto your system. They want you to click an attachment, go to a site, or reply to them. So we've had phishing emails in the city where people have fallen for it. It comes from IT@cupertino.org. Hey, we need to reset your user ID and password. Could you please give us your user ID and password? And people did that, even though the yellow caution banner on there is no IT@cupertino.org address, right? So there's a big difference between phishing campaigns and just normal spam. Spam's junk mail. Spam's the same stuff that we used to get in the mail where you get all those flyers all the time. That's what it is. That's what spam's about. Phishing is more someone's trying to steal something from you or disrupt service.
Thank you for the information.
You bet.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. I don't see any more questions from at least here in the commission, but I'm trying to see whether I have one attendee, and I would like to open up for a public comment on this one as well. I think I have one attendee on I see it. In case the attendee wants to make a comment, please. I think I see Jennifer. If you want, you can, I think *9, I believe, or I think they can say, they raise a hand. How do they do that, Whitney?
Yeah, if they're an attendee, they can use the raise your hand function. And if they're calling in by phone, then you can.
They got *9. Okay.
Now, Jennifer's a pro at this.
Oh, okay. Sure. Okay. Looks like I don't see yet on it. Okay, that's great. Thank you so much,
Raise your hand.
Michelle. This is really interactive. Yeah, thank you. So let's
I
move
did
on.
notice Jennifer raised her hand.
I'm sorry. Oh,
Did-
okay. I didn't see it now. Yes, I'm sorry. Maybe less. So hello, Jennifer. I think I allowed you to. Please.
Hello. Yes, this was a wonderful presentation. We did the alpha version this at the Housing Commission meeting. It was very good. I think it was housing, if I'm not mistaken, but Bill does a wonderful job, and I think he's a great guy. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jennifer. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Bill. So with that, I think we can move on to the next agenda item. It's approval of minutes, item number 2. This is the meeting of July 2nd, 2020. I think draft minutes are posted. And I would like to see, is there any comments on it from a commissioner or any corrections or any amendment has to happen? Just want to wait for a few minutes. If nothing else, can I invite a motion from anyone, please?
I'll move that we approve the minutes from the meeting of July 2nd.
Great. Carol proposed it. Anybody seconding it?
Yeah, I can second.
Excellent. Thank you. I think Carol proposed it and Anisha seconded it. So the meeting minutes of July 2nd, 2020 is there, but we need to take a quick vote as well on this one, right? Before we approve it. So let's go for the voting. Whitney, you can help me.
Chair Kumarapan?
Yeah. Aye.
Vice Chair Stanek?
Pass, yes.
Commissioner Tombe?
Yep.
Commissioner Begor?
Approve.
Commissioner Shu?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great. The motion passed 5 out of 5. Thank you. Do we have any postponements, Whitney or Joanne? I don't think so. Okay, excellent. Let's go for oral communications, and I'd like to open it up for public again. For the items, if it is not in the agenda, and if you want to talk about anything, I think I have only Jennifer, I see it, in case if you wanted to, for any agenda item, any item which is not on the agenda, please, you can raise your hand and we can let you speak. Okay, I don't see it. That's great. So let's move on to written communications. Hello, Whitney, did we receive any written communications?
We did receive 2 written communications for the Rancho Rinconada item, and they were included in the packet, which was sent to all the commissioners.
Excellent. Thank you. So let's move on to the old business, item number 3. It is update on the coronavirus impacts to Cupertino Park and Recreation programs. The staff report, I think Director Juan, you are the one going to provide us, I believe.
Good evening, commissioners. Nice to see all of you again. I'm just going to have Whitney share a very short PowerPoint to give you some updates on the park and recreation programs. And so we will be talking about a few things, virtual fitness classes that are still being offered, both free and paid, in person and virtual camps, both golf and tennis, presentations, social groups, and workshops that are being hosted by staff via Zoom, the Shakespeare at Home program, as well as Hack Cupertino that went virtual for 2020. And then just want to give you a brief update on the planning for fall classes, programs, and activities. So I know we talked about participation numbers last month, and so have a couple of updates here. So last week we had 343 people attend our virtual fitness classes. So those are still going very well. I know that we were interested in in-person camps and how many people were attending based on how many spots we had available. So this is a little over 75% full. So we had 110 out of 142 spots for this week. And then virtual camps, we had 115 attendees for virtual camps this week. And then moving on to some other participation numbers. Again, I know that the commission is interested in unique users for both golf and tennis. And unfortunately, at this time, our system is not set up to track that information. However, we will be moving towards trying to set that up so we can actually get that information moving forward. So we're working on that. But I wanted to let you know that last week, we had over 1,000 reservations for golf, as well as 638 reservations for tennis. And then we had over 100 attendees for our presentation, social groups, and workshops that the majority of those we're doing through the senior center programs. So that is the information about participation, and just a couple little highlights that we wanted to talk to you all about. This weekend is the final shows of the Shakespeare at Home program, and King Lear is being featured on Saturday at 7 p.m. and Sunday at 4 p.m. And you can watch for free on this YouTube link here that is provided. And then just another quick update about Hack Cupertino 2020. That occurred from July 18th to the 25th. It was our first virtual hackathon. We had some commissioners as judges. Thank you very much. We appreciate your participation. We had 120 participants and 43 submissions. So very successful event, even in light of COVID. And I think just to kind of wrap it up, I think that we're all still kind of shocked that we're still in this shelter in place situation. And so I want to let you know, staff is working very hard at trying to reimagine all of the different programs, activities, and events that will be offered in the fall. So we're hoping to bring back some of that information at the next commission meeting after we've vetted some of the different costs associated and abilities for us to offer those different things. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Thank you. And let's see if there are any clarification from, or definitely, I don't want to get the question from my furry friend, but I see Carol. I see you, Commissioner Carol, please.
Thank you. I had one question. So I saw that a number of programs between now and I guess the end of the summer season were finally updated to be canceled, the in-person kinds of things. And one of those, so I guess swimming is one of the things at Blackberry that we're not going to be doing. So I realized that, you know, we are limited at Blackberry to our 100 days. Do we get to bank those days in any way to use them later in the year? Is that a 100 days during the summer?
So my understanding, good question. I had the same question, actually. I was hoping we could carry them forward, perhaps. But my understanding is that it's through the actual year. So from January 1st to December 31st. So if the shelter in place is lifted in October or November, then we can utilize the 100 days up until December 31st.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. And Commissioner Sashi, I think you have some questions.
Unmute me.
You're on. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
So thank you for that update, Joanne. Just wondering, how does it compare to normal years? Is it like a 10th, the participation, or is it even a quarter? Do we have any numbers of that just to understand where we are with, there's a lot of work going into these virtual programs and just trying to see what the return is.
I appreciate that question. Obviously, I have only been here a little over 2 months. I'm in my 9th week, but I just want to speak to the fact that, staff worked very hard to put together programs with the current restrictions that are in place, which are very restrictive. You know, we can only have 12 kids in a group to one instructor. We have to have spaces available. And so we haven't done that comparison yet. Considering we are in our new fiscal year that started July 1st, we're going to be looking at July 1st through July 31st fiscal numbers to try and make sure that we're being diligent about what we're doing in the coming months. But that information was just finalized, so we haven't had a chance to look at that yet.
Okay.
But a great question, and something we are very interested in finding out.
Great, thank you. And I see a question from Commissioner Mina, please.
Hi, and thank you for doing such a wonderful job during such hard time. And I noticed recently in Santa Clara County, the COVID-19 case number increased dramatically, but Cupertino still have a good performance. Our number is very low. In several days, it's 0 and then maybe 1 or 2. But I heard some daycare near Cupertino. There's several COVID-19 cases. I just wondering, for the more than 100 people attend our in-person camp or some other city service, is there still 0 case of the COVID-19? Or I just want curious.
So our camps our in-person camps are actually at many different facilities throughout the city. So they don't all happen in the same facility. Some happen at the sports center, some happen at Quinlan, some happen at Monte Vista. So they're spread throughout, and usually there is, they're very limited. Again, 12 kids, they have their own entrance and exit to the building. They have their own use of their bathroom facilities. So it's very restrictive.
Okay. Thank you for the information.
Sure.
Excellent. Thank you. And I do see a question from Commissioner Nisha.
Sorry. Was this clarifying questions?
Yeah.
I had a comment.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you. I'd like to see, do we have any public comments on this one? I think, Jennifer, you're still there. If you have any comment, you can raise your hand or star 9, please. Okay, I don't see it. So maybe I'll open it up for discussions. Nisha Tambe, Commissioner, yes, you are in.
Awesome. So I saw that it was 75% full for the youth, that demographic.
The in-person camps, 77%.
In-person camps. I mean, I think that's great. Having a small little nugget at home. It's definitely even a couple hours of something for them to do. It really makes a massive difference. So I think that's amazing. I think 75% is fantastic. And I'm really excited, really grateful to staff for putting this together. And hopefully, we can continue to do this safely. But I think it's so valuable that my focus is less on the ROI of the monetary ROI and much more on the actual human impact, which I think is really significant. And that's what Parks and Rec is here for, is that human impact. So thank you very much. And I appreciate it to you and the staff. So please convey that.
I will. Thank you so much.
Great. Any other discussions from any commissioners? I don't see any raising hand. Yeah, I just wanted to again make a comment on partly discussion, Joanne. I think this is great. We are keeping into resonating what Commissioner Mina said. We could able to keep it under control. And the only thing we're like, are we sharing this information? I know through the website for all the community members. And sometime back we talked about it. How do they provide feedback? And is it like through the website or call? They can call and ask for questions or anything. Is that any movement happening on it? Like how many people calling to get to know things either through email or through phone? It'll be good if you could just share. And I want to know how active they are reaching out to us with the question.
Well, I don't have statistics on that, but I will have you know that staff are fielding calls and emails constantly. I think that with school starting next week, people are trying to figure out what we're doing, and we're still trying to figure out what we're doing. So we're trying to get a program in place as soon as possible so that we can start advertising, getting people registered, and start up the programs. But to be quite honest with you, we probably won't be starting our fall programs and activities and classes until after Labor Day. Just realistically, in order to get all the information in our registration system, get it advertised and coordinated, it's a huge effort, and it's coordinates among many staff with many different facilities with many different restrictions. So it's quite the effort, and I appreciate that people want to know what we're doing, and we're going to try and get as much information out there as soon as possible.
Great, and maybe I'll have one more question partly on it. So you just touched on it. Is there a way we are going to communicate to the both school districts, CUSD as well as the Fremont United School District, that because sometimes they can easily send it to the parents. Hey, these are the programs after school, kind of. Because right now, earlier it's okay, then they know that they can just walk in and do it. But I think the other mechanism is that school districts are sending details to them, even though it's all distant learning to start with. It'll be good to latch onto the same communication in case if you open it up of any of these programs when we really materialize it. I think it'll be good to connect with the school district as well, so that they can even share that information along with their communication with us, the students, which may be easy, so they don't have to come and every time ask us and stuff, because you're using a good mechanism. Because that's how we see it. For just a suggestion.
Yeah, actually, I did communicate with the school district last week just to try and understand if they had any specific needs or how we could collaborate. And so absolutely, we will share our information with them as soon as we have our ducks in a row.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I don't see any more discussion, raising hands on it. That's great. Thank you so much, Joanne. Again, we're not going to let you go because you're going to come back again on the next topic. So we are moving on to the next topic on item number 4, which is, okay, sorry, my overview just got back. Give me 1 second. I had it on my agenda item. Item number 4, subject Rancho Recanado Recreation and Park District survey results and options for additional community outreach. I request again, Joanne, I think you are the one going to present, I believe.
Yes, I'm happy to present on this topic as well. Just want to give you a little update. Again, a lot of this precedes me, so if I get anything wrong, both Christine Hanel, our assistant director, as well as Whitney Zeller is here to correct me or provide any support in helping answer any of the questions. But want to go through our agenda here for this evening on this topic. And so what we intend to do is just again revisit the background of this topic, and we're here to discuss the March 2020 survey results, as well as just kind of reiterate and re-go over the Park Master Plan aquatic recommendations that were submitted as the adopted Master Park Plan in February of this year, and then talk about next steps. And so last year, LAFCO commissioned a report. I believe they presented the report to you all in January of 2020. Again, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong at the end of this about anything, but I believe that based on the report, there were 3 options and that the commission was considering 2 options when putting together the survey to be dispersed. And option 1 was to maintain the Park and Recreation, the Recreation and Park District, which it's very hard for me to swap those 2 when I talk, so I apologize. Keep their current governance, which is status quo. And then the option 2 was the merger with the city of Cupertino. And so out of that, the survey was put together again at the March commission meeting. And again, that was still prior to my arrival, but my understanding is that the survey was, and a letter was hand delivered to the 1,295 district households, and that the sports staff did that delivery right before the shelter in place was in place. The survey was available from March 7th to the 23rd. And there was additionally, the survey was posted on the Rancho Recanado project website that staff also established with a link. And then there were e-notifications that were sent to several people who signed up for that. And a distribution list was created as well. So moving on to the survey responses, there were some challenges, obviously, with the survey distribution and some of the statistics that were collected associated to the responses. We had 79 individual responses, but some households had more than one respondent, which was not what we were anticipating or hoping for. So we wanted one respondent per household. District household response rate were 50 households for a little less than 4% of a response rate. And there were 17 non-district household responses. That information was verified through our staff. So based on the addresses that were submitted. So there were many different questions in the survey that talked about programming, use, time of year that the facilities were used. And the question that we had at the start here was about whether they preferred option 1 or option 2. And so I thought this was pertinent to put on the slide that 27 of the respondents, 34% preferred option 1, while 51 responded, 65% preferred option 2. Now, again, you have to take into account that some people responded more than they were supposed to, according to what we were hoping for the survey. Moving on from that, and you all have the survey results that were sent to you for your review. What I want to talk about now is the master plan and its reference to aquatics programming. So in the master plan, there are a couple of sections that refer to aquatics programming. And so I just want to review this as a refresher for you, because I know this was adopted in February. But a couple of things that are pertinent to this conversation are that sections 4B and 4C that talk about either community needs at existing parks or through renovations of existing facilities or at sites acquired in the future. And these specifically talk about evaluating options for joint use partnerships or renovations of existing public, private, or partner facilities prior to building new ones. And then year-round aquatics is specifically called out. They talk about the Blackberry Farm Pool Complex and expanding the swimming season, which, you know, again, as Commissioner Stanek had mentioned, we have 100 days currently at that location. And again, just reiterating, pursuing partnerships with other entities that have swimming pools in and near Cupertino, especially focused on secure time for family swimming, swim lessons, lap swimming, and aquatic exercise. And then evaluating, providing a year-round aquatics complex in the city based on a business and operations plan that recommends a design program. Okay, so I don't want to have to read the entire slide to you, but I think you get the gist. And then on the next slide, it also, in the master plan, it also just, again, talks about potential elements that would be of interest. And so I want to just bring this to your attention that, you know, the Rancho site would fulfill some of these things as far as lap pool, recreation pool, having availability to party rooms or rental features. So just wanted to, again, refresh your memory about the master plan in this area. And then finally, I wanted to talk about next steps. So I know that prior discussions have been around potentially hosting an open house out at the site and additional in-person community engagement. And I just think that due to the current shelter in place, it's just going to be way too challenging to be able to accomplish something of that nature. And so our other option is to really engage in another survey include all Cupertino residents because, again, this will affect everyone if the city does decide to engage in option 2. And then what we can discuss if you decide to recommend doing another survey of some sort is we can consider editing or changing any of the questions based on feedback. We don't have to discuss that tonight. We can get your edits at some other time and then come back to you with potential new questions to discuss and approve. But that is really, we're requesting your feedback about next steps. And that's really where we are. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you, Director Joanne. With that, let's go for any clarification questions from the commissioners. I see the first one from Commissioner Nisha, please. Nisha Thampe.
I was muted. I was just curious, what's the difference between, what is the desire or goal of having a citywide survey for this specific thing?
So I think that it's important to just note that this does affect the whole community and that their input is valid, because if the city does decide to go with option 2, again, this would be a recreational facility that would be able to provide aquatic programs and services and rentals to the entire community. So I think that it's just of interest to community members as to whether or not they're interested in that, and if Rancho Rinconada fulfills the goal that the master plan actually talks about.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions from any other commissioners? Clarification questions? I see Commissioner Carol Stanek, please.
Thank you. Joanne, so I have a question on the survey results. Did you see any pattern? Did you look at any of the answers that came from households versus non-households in the district? So was it evident that households, could you see any pattern of the way the people who were in the district answered versus those outside of the district?
So we didn't extrapolate that information specifically. All we did was verify the responses. So we didn't take those responses and categorize them separately to evaluate them. But that is something we could do.
Yeah, because it seems like if we really were focusing on households, then we'd want to exclude the non-households from the results. And so, but what's interesting is, that's okay.
Yeah, maybe,
I'm not going to make a comment. No more question.
Yeah, we'll move it when it comes to come. Thank you. And we'd like to see any other clarifications, questions from any commissioners. I don't see it, but I do have one. Do we have any specific percentage response putting as a kind of a minimum bar for this survey? Because I see 1295, 79 versus 1295, which is 6%. But city, have we put any minimum guideline on this, Director, that we need to get minimum to do it?
I don't think there were any requirements initially set forth in the response rate.
Okay, thank you. If no more questions, I would like to go for a public comment, and I do see Jennifer Griffin online. Hello, Jennifer, I allowed you to talk, please.
Yes, good evening, Chair. I'm Jennifer Griffin. I've lived in Rancho Rinconada area since 1985. I've been a homeowner since 1995. We were in the county of Santa Clara until 2000. My great aunt was an original owner. From 1950, I used to come here as a child, actually went to the swim club. My husband learned how to swim, and he was raised in Monte Vista. He learned how to swim at the Rancho pool. I'm very, very concerned and upset about this survey. I feel that it was rushed. I have attended the LAFCO meeting in person I have gone to every city council meeting about this. I've gone to every planning commission meeting. I've gone to every park and rec meeting. I'm not happy about the progress of the survey. I think the results are deceptive. Having 11 responses from one household is not the way to do a survey. I don't think that we can use this survey as any sort of response rate. I am very, very, very against having people outside of Rancho Rinconada participate in this discussion. Maybe you can have a separate survey where people outside of the district can make comments, but no one outside of Rancho Rinconada has the right to make a decision about how the $1 million assets of the pool, they cannot be given to the city. It is a legal special district. It has to be respected for what it is. And I am very, very against having people outside of the district. Remember, Rancho only annexed to Cupertino 20 years ago. For 50 years, it was in the county, a standalone entity. So therefore, it is not appropriate to have random people from other parts of the city or outside of the city make comments on assets that are not theirs at this point. I'm going to use that gingerly because people in the district pay a special tax. People in Cupertino outside do not. We need to make sure that we respect that fact. There's been a lot of verbiage thrown around that is deceptive. I also do not want Nextdoor used as any type of communication vehicle. Not everyone is on it, and it is not secure, and it is full of many, many faults. I think the survey needs to be redone if that's what you want to do. I'm option number one. I'm very happy with it, and I will sell you right
now. I think it'll be great if you could wrap.
Were not supposed to be disclosed in this survey. I said explicitly it was only to be shown to staff, but I see my comments written in there for the whole public to see. So that is a problem. And I think Blackberry Farm should be opened up to 24 months for 12
Jennifer,
months.
Is that okay? I think we have time. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. I don't see any other attendees on it right now. So let me see. How do I? Okay. Great. So now let's open it up for the commissioners for any discussions on this topic. I know we started one earlier. Let's go with it. I think Commissioner Carroll, you started on it earlier. I haven't seen hands raised, but I think you started earlier. You held back on it for the discussion, so you can go ahead. Yes, please. You're on a mute.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd like to hear from the subcommittee on what they have discussed around this, because I know that they've looked into it more deeply. So I would appreciate their comments.
Okay, if that is the case, I think there is a subcommittee about the commissioners, and if you have any comments and discussions along this topic, it'll be great. You can raise your hand, and I will just, I think, Sashi or Commissioner Sashi or Mina, whoever. Okay,
Sure.
Commissioner Sashi, yeah, please.
Okay. So we did look at the results. It looks like there weren't enough people within the Rancho Rinconada that actually participated in the discussion or in the survey. So it was kind of interesting that, you know, for all the people that replied, there were very few households that saw it. Commissioner Mina can attest to that. She lives there. She didn't even get the survey or didn't even see the survey. So that's an interesting point. So our conclusion from looking at the results was that this needs to be redone with some fixes to the survey itself. That was what we thought when we went through it. Mina, do you want to comment on anything else?
Yeah, go ahead, Commissioner Mina.
Yes, I agree. We didn't get enough response for this survey, so it's even if we do further research about split the response from in the district and outside district, I am not sure if that's really give us some valid information because the response number are so small. And I think the survey time is, yeah. And this survey went out in March, and at that time, a lot of shocking news was flying around because of COVID-19. So that's why they didn't pay attention to this survey. Maybe that's why we didn't get enough response. So I believe next time we can get more valid answer and give us more information. And the SIP situation is another thing. If there's no the SIP limitation, we can do more community outreach work and maybe hold some, maybe have some coffee hour, maybe hold some meeting at the Rancho, the lobby house. But now we cannot do that. Yeah, so we still need to get more. We just want to collect more information from our community to see what they really want. Yeah, I think that's important.
Thank you. I see.
Just want to add one more thing. I mean, the fact that we don't know when this shelter in place thing will ever get out. When we'll be out of the shelter in place ever. But the plan really was that once we get to that place, we should have a way to address the entire community so we get more participation. We don't want it to be such a low participation survey. And of course, we will fix the survey itself to be a little less, to be a little bit more focused on what we're trying to get out of this.
Thank you. And I see Commissioner Nisha Tampe, is that yes, please. Okay.
So I was actually thinking about what Commissioner Mina had said, which is like, it is a really low response rate. And I like the idea of surveying the entire city to me doesn't make sense only because we've basically done that. We already know, because of all the work we did for the master plan, what the city's response would be to another aquatic facility. Based off of all of the research we did before, I think it would be redundant to be like, hey, you guys said that you wanted lap swim and you wanted all these aquatic facilities. Now we have an aquatic facility. Do you want it? So I think it's just kind of like, that to me would just be doubling work for no reason on something that we spent 5 years putting together. But I am concerned that we only got a very select number of people from inside Rancho Rinconada district. But I actually think that's really indicative of a larger issue, which is, it seems to me that the community there is actually just simply not aware of the resource that is available in their community. Even our own commissioners didn't know that that was something that was available to them. And so I think that's actually telling in itself. I don't think that's, a significant number, but I do think that number in itself gives us a lot of information. It basically says that, even though we did all this outreach, even though there was a bunch of outreach done, if you don't know why you're being asked these questions or what the purpose of those questions are, or you don't even know that this thing exists because it's controlled by a very small group of people that are supposed to represent you, I think that's pretty indicative. And I do also want to highlight the fact that the only reason we're actually looking into this is because the district, when it was under a different management, had actually gone to LAFCO and wanted them to dissolve the district. So if I remember this conversation correctly, and it's also the survey introduction, which is at the request of a few of the people inside the Rancho Rinconada district, they are the ones who approach LAFCO. So it isn't something that the city is just coming in and being like, we want to do this. It's coming from inside. And I think it's important that we, we pay attention to the voices of people who live there on both sides, and make sure that we're really paying attention to, if there's any kind of misuse of publicizing the fact that this place exists. And so that's a really big concern to me. And then the last thing is, no on the citywide survey just seems very redundant to me. I am concerned that 79 people, or, there's a very small number of respondents for the survey. I think that's just an indication of the fact that, there's some management and management issues around not the survey, because we did actually do a lot reaching out. And I don't think that there would be any point in having an in-person thing, because if the community members don't know about it, they're not even going to go to something because they don't know it's there. So I don't necessarily I just don't think that there's a point in redoing a survey if people didn't take it the first time. And then the last component is, I want to be explicitly clear. We all pay the same amount of taxes. It's just we're taking the taxes that are paid by the residents in that area, their taxes go less to the rest of city things to concentrate on this specific area. So they are not paying more. It's like a funneled off amount of money. So I just want that to be perfectly clear to anyone watching. You are not paying extra taxes. You are paying the same amount of money as everybody else. It's just set aside differently. And it's set aside in a way that doesn't actually benefit everybody the way that my taxes benefit everybody in Cupertino. So I think that's also important to be mindful of.
Thank you. Thanks, Commissioner Nisha. And I see Commissioner Carroll.
Thank you. So I know getting responses on surveys is just so difficult. And one of the concerns I have about the survey is that there's a lot of misunderstanding about this facility. And you can see that even of the comments that were made in the survey. And in particular, I think there's misinformation about the people who are saying option 2, which, the city taking it over. Some of the comments are, the facility is crowded with just district members. So the problem with that comment is this person clearly doesn't know that 80% of the usage of the facility is from outside the district. So that's a real problem, that I don't think that people understand. They're making comments that clearly show they don't know what the numbers are. They may think it's their exclusive facility, and the answer is that it's not. And it's a public facility. And I think a lot of people think that it's their private facility, and it has not been, whether that was set up originally or not, I can't talk to that. I can say that it is absolutely not, since LAFCO sent this up. It is a public facility. And in fact, the research that was done by the consultant highlighted the low percentage of usage by the Rancho members, which was completely blew me away. But I think before we do another survey, or if we do another survey, somehow in conjunction, if we do that, we need to get the facts straight to the people who are in the district. Some of the other comments, it's a scam for the city of Cupertino to be taking over these property taxes. Here's one that says, the people in the district are assessed a tax that other Cupertino residents are not. And as Nisha said, that's just not true. The correct understanding and the way the taxes work is that taxes from the Rancho group are diverted really to the district. Taxes that otherwise, if they didn't have the district, if they were allocated the way the rest of our taxes are allocated, would go to just about all of the other city services, and Mid-Peninsula Open Space Preserve would be getting a big chunk of that. And they're not getting any money from the taxes that the Rancho pay. So I think somehow we need to make sure that people this is not fun stuff. This is not stuff that your average resident has any interest in or has ever been exposed to. It is down in the weeds of county tax allocation. And it's not surprising that they don't understand it. I don't expect them to, but the reality is that there are misconceptions about the taxes and about the facility itself. And so before we go and do anything, I think we need some education if we're going to survey again, because it's clear that there are misunderstandings about this facility. There was a comment that the city is trying to strong arm its way into the facility, and that just couldn't be farther from the truth. This LAFCO has defined this as a zero sphere of influence, and they're the ones that said there is no need for this district to exist. And so there's so much that I think people don't understand, and I don't necessarily blame them for not understanding it. I wouldn't expect an average resident to understand it. And so I am very concerned about people really understand. When you're asking people to fill out a survey, you have to have an expectation that they understand why you're asking the questions and what the implications are. I think I'll leave it at that for now.
Thank you, Carol. Commissioner Mena, you raised your hand, please.
Yeah, I agree that people need more education and need to know more facts of the district about the tax, about how the swimming pool is running. Yeah, so maybe we can discuss how can we do that. Maybe for on the page of Rancho Rinconada page, we can add some information about some facts and put them clearly, maybe some Q&A, just some question about the tax, yeah, and then give the answer. Just put some facts on the page, and then when people fill the survey, they have a chance to read the web page and learn about this issue. But I still think the SIP situation affected the response rate of this survey, because in March a lot of serious problem in our community, so people didn't pay attention. So that's why we think it's necessary to do a survey again. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments and discussion. So let me go to Commissioner Sashi.
Carol, I get your concern that there wasn't enough education about the what was going on in the district, and as well, and therefore we did not get a really valid survey. That was exactly our conclusion in the subcommittee. But more importantly, what we also found was there wasn't even an awareness that a survey occurred, which for me was was just, it was a complete waste of time, really. Fortunately, whatever, we can't accept the survey results. So one of the things that we had thought about with Joanne when we discussed this, and I think Joanne mentioned it in her presentation, is that we need to find a way to first educate the community about the property, educate the community about the survey, and maybe when we have this in person, or however we're going to do it at some point, we would actually have them fill out a survey at the end of it, or something like that. So obviously this survey was not adequate. Secondly, the education was not there, so people don't even understand what the problem is in order to be able to, appropriately reply to the survey. So those are two things that we recognize right off looking at the survey results. And I think that in the end, all I can say was that we did the survey for a certain reason, and we got educated in that we need to get that information through to the people, first of all, that one, what's the facility is supposed to do, and two, that there is a survey and it is in their interest for them to talk about it.
Thank you, Commissioner Sashi, and I see Commissioner Nisha has some more comments to add, please.
Yeah, so I definitely, I recognize that there's a huge community education piece that needs to happen. But my challenge is this: we can't put it on the website you should put it on the website, but the challenge of putting it on the website means a person has to already know that that's a website to go to. And so inherently it's self-selecting. So we're not going to get the responses from people who don't know that whole area exists, or they don't know how to use it, or they think that it's a private area. And that to me is an issue. I know that it seems like there's some challenges with getting responses. Can we reiterate, Joanne, what the steps that were taken were for this survey? Because if I recall correctly, there was something dropped off to every household, and then there were several attempts at communication again and again in multiple different ways. Can we reiterate that? Because I understand that COVID is a thing, but like when you get hit with something 3 times, eventually you pay attention to it if it matters, or if you're aware of the issue.
I'm probably not the best person to speak on how the survey was distributed. Whitney, if you wouldn't mind providing some background information on that.
Yeah, so when we came to you guys and reviewed the survey soon after, we put a whole team together of rec staff, which physically went out door to door. I don't have information on where the letters were placed. I don't know if they were placed at the doors or in mailboxes, but we did hand deliver letters to all of the Rancho Rinconada residents. And then on top of that, the survey was linked on the webpage for Rancho Rinconada, and those who were signed up to receive e-notifications on the topic, I believe, were sent email on that as well. So
I thank you for highlighting that, because it expired about at the end of 2018, but I used to have an international certification for research and testing, and that is literally the most that we can do is hand deliver our survey to people in that community. Like, there's no actual way of effective distribution outside of hand delivering that paper. Now, if people choose to ignore it, we can't do anything about that because of the constraints of COVID. Even if we knock on doors, we can't do that anymore. And I think to say, okay, well, let's wait for COVID to be over is just pushing this issue out for 2 years. And that's not going to be, people aren't going to casually open doors for everybody anymore. That's not a reality we live in. So I get the point of needing community education. I just candidly don't see how it's possible. And it concerns, when this was first brought to our attention, a lot of the behaviors that were outlined concern me, and the fact that there's no recourse for any of the citizens who live within that district past the immediate board, to me, is a concern. And LAFCO themselves have basically told us that this was an outlier. It should have been integrated, 20 years ago, when Rancho Rinconada was incorporated into the city. This was a leftover. This was not intentionally set aside, according to LAFCO. When they had come to give us the presentation and we had asked them that question. So have we done any direct outreach with Joe Samedian's office to talk to them? Because candidly, it doesn't seem like they care, because the residents that spoke about issues that were happening went to the county, and the county said, this is not our problem. And so to me, I think that's that's important to know. And the second thing is the facility needs a bunch of upgrades. Like it's coming up for a ton of upgrades, which candidly the reserves will not cover. And so I think that especially during shelter in place where there is a limited to no use of that facility is a great time to be remodeling and to bring it up to the standards that it needs to be with like ADA compliance, and also just it's getting old and it needs to be refurbished. So, or refurbished,
yeah, it's good.
So, so yeah, there's a lot of work that needs to be done to it, but one, I don't even think that Rancho Rinconada has the reserves to do all of those upgrades, which I think the city would be happy to do when instead of building an aquatic facility to support that. And then one of the comments that was made during oral communications was that we should open Blackberry Farm for all 12 months. I completely think that is something we should look into, Rancho Rinconada aside. So.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Commissioner Nisha. So let's try to wrap it up. And I do have a few comments and questions. Maybe I'll just summarize a few things, what I heard, and maybe I think I would like to look at the next steps to Director Joanne. So a couple of things is my observation and kind of resonate with almost all Commissioner talked about. One is definitely the survey numbers related to even just 1295, with that only 6% of it, absolutely not a representative sample. That's one, which from my personal thing, based on the surveys we do at work and other places, this is definitely not a representative sample. That's number one. Number two, even if we do, with citywide, I think that's what you originally proposed, we should be able to identify, distinguish between what we got from Rancho Rinconada area and the other. So because the weightage should be, it's okay to go for, I'm not against it. At the same time, if you don't have the distinction of, okay, these are the survey results from the Rancho community and the rest, if you don't, I think it is going to clutter it because it is not going to truly represent the real residents. So that's another request. If you do it, it should be. The questions, couple of questions I had was when we did this one online, I think you outlined it, we got an online survey and we posted it. I did see it, it was pasted kind of on my doorstep. So it is that's what I got it. I live in the same district. But out of the 79, did they really responded through the paper one, or they responded through do we have how many online, how many paper too? Because the paper originally it was we were on the road, on the ad, so nobody might have even seen it because it is not delivered, like of course hand delivered, but the city tried to attempt to put it. It's not in the postbox, which everyone could have picked up. It was on the door, and it definitely that's maybe one of the reasons maybe many people might have not even seen it. That one. So if you have, because online is very difficult now to see. I mean, when I say difficult, at the time it was, but now if you have a message to them, we have an online survey. Everyone need to do it, where we can put this awareness. This is what I was thinking. I know Commissioner Risha touched on this too. The awareness can happen only not through in person or anything, given the current situation. Even if you call for a Zoom meeting or all of them, it's going to be very difficult. At least even if you have these kind of information being sent to them through post or something, that they can visit a place and they can see all the awareness, all the details. If you could put a video and why are we doing it, what the problem we are trying to do, and then we'll ask for a survey. It may attract more people than just sending a survey. I just say simply ignore because people, again, one, you're right. I'm one of those person lived in for a long, and very late I realized that there is one swimming pool in the corner because because it is kind of hidden inside kind of a complex. So I completely missed it, even though I drove through that almost every day for my work, and I didn't see it. Right? It's an awareness completely, and I know that facility exists. So it'll be very important. I think all of them. But one thing is absolutely. My thing is that we need to come up with a plan. And since Joanne, I know that we are putting you in a hot spot because many of those prayer ones, you are not aware of it. I think you're collecting information. It'll be good to reiterate with the LAFCO when they came and presented and did it, maybe trying to find out what the urgency of it, because at the time it seems to be an urgent kind of it came in. That's why we are acting on it quickly. But I'm not sure is it that urgent to be done. If it is, then I think you may want to sync up with them and then come up with a plan, education, awareness, and then survey. And the survey should be really distinguishing between where it is coming from. If you don't have those infrastructure, it's going to be very hard to make any decision. That's kind of my comments. Again, my personal comments on it. Okay. So before we wrap up, I do see another comment from or discussion point from Commissioner Carroll. I think hopefully after that we can move on to the next one, which is also a good topic, which Dr. John will be there. Hello, Commissioner Carroll, please, you can go ahead.
Thank you. I don't think we should write off doing education. I think we could advertise and we could actually do some in-person, socially distanced education outdoors at that facility. Probably would be very convenient if people wanted to come. We could also have a video that could be viewed online. So attack it from a couple of different ways. And I think what's really important is to make sure that the people seeing this understand what the facts are and why this has come up. So I think that we absolutely should attempt to do some outreach with education, with slides that describe the usage at the facility, who's using it between residents and non-residents for each of the various programs, because we have that information that was provided to us. And I think it will be very eye-opening to the people there. And and how could this be managed in a different way? Maybe they have some suggestions that they want to see. And so I think we should attempt that before we do a survey.
Great, thank you. I think, Dr. Chivansi, you really wanted to, you presented it, and your main objective is to get the feedback and the comments from the commissioners and the public. I think you have received. If you do have any closing comments, otherwise, I don't think that you expect anything to pass on you. Rather, you just wanted to hear from us. Is that right? The objective of this presentation?
Yeah, I appreciate all your comments. No, this is a very complicated issue, and again, only have been, with the city for a couple months, so trying to get up to speed on this one has been a challenge. Reading lots of reports and trying to understand the issue myself. Again, I don't disagree that education would be appropriate. Again, I just feel like it's very challenging at this point in time as far as staff bandwidth and ability to kind of tilt up an in-person engagement of any kind. May not happen very quickly. And again, take staff time, resources, money. And so I'm not against that, but again, I just want to be mindful of the challenges that do come along with that. I think that I've heard some good ideas about videos or utilization of the website. But again, that takes a lot of time and effort to kind of lay that information out and, disseminate it correctly. So if you would like us to, take your feedback that you've supplied us here tonight, meet with the subcommittee, and come up with possible next steps for how to proceed, we can come back to you at the next meeting and try and put something together based on the feedback we've gotten here tonight, if that's acceptable.
Sure, thank you. Thank you. I know we'll have one last thing from, I think Commissioner Carroll wants to say something. After that, I think we can move on to the next topic. Yeah, please.
This may be premature, but on the question that talks about how often do you use the facility, and that was actually my suggestion to add. And I think that the multiple choice responses were very ambiguous. We got regularly, occasionally, rarely. Never is the only one that you know what they mean. So I think that was the choices were not optimal. I would do something, if you want to know regularly, I would say something like weekly. occasionally, rarely, I thought you could say, less than 10 times a year, and then occasionally define that somewhere in there, never as obvious. And I think there was one other response, but yeah, I just thought, how can you make any sense of what anybody means by occasionally, rarely? Didn't make any sense to me. Makes
sense, exactly. Thank you. Thanks, Commissioner. So, Dr. Juan, you got the inputs and you said that, okay, maybe the subcommittee can sit together, assimilating all this information and then work with you, come up with it, and we might be able to hear this possibly in the next meeting. I think that's how I hope. So thank you. And again, we are not giving you a hard time. We just wanted to share all the passion for the community. So I know you've been here only for 2 months plus, and we just wanted to know we are so passionate commissioners and as well as the community members. So we wanted to share that opinion. Thank you. So with that, I think we will move on to item number 5. It is about update on the Parks and Recreation Strategic Plan. And I know it's coming back to you. Do you want a few minutes break to get some water and stuff, Director Joanne? Because you're on a roll on different, and we're not going to let you. So maybe...
I'm not gonna make Michael and Gail wait any longer. With further ado.
Oh, so this is going to be presented by Michael. Okay.
There's going to be a bunch of us presenting. We will be handing off together, trying to dance on Zoom together tonight. So this evening we are here to present the strategic plan guidance to the commissioners. And I am happy to announce that Michael Zimmerman and Gail Seeds from the Public Works Department are here in order to help us set the framework for this item. So we appreciate them attending and their patience with us tonight being the final item. So Whitney, if you can move great, thank you. So the agenda for this evening, we're gonna set the framework at the beginning portion of this meeting to talk about the funded projects from 1920 that are carried forward to 2021. Again, with the COVID impacts, we were not able to get to all of the projects that were funded in 1920, so we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about the funded projects for the fiscal year 2021. We're going to cover considerations for the strategic plan, evaluation for the implementation, and next steps. So I will be turning this portion over to Michael to speak on the capital improvement projects.
Good evening, commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. I want to give you a brief rundown of the currently funded projects from 1920. Let's start with all-inclusive playground at Jollyman. This project was affected greatly by the COVID and the shelter in place. As we were starting and we were trying to develop a fundraising strategy, we were hit with the shelter in place. We knew it was not a good time to fundraise. We had a pretty heavy lift of about $2.6 million that we were trying to fundraise for. So we have gone back to the county, asked them to allow us to not only get additional schedule relief, but we have also asked for some scope relief, possibly downsizing the project and reducing our fundraising goal. Next up, we have the gardens. This was funded at $300,000 to build additional community gardens throughout the city in neighborhood parks. Again, we were looking for some input from the council, input from the commissioners on sites to identify sizes of the garden. Again, this was affected by the shelter in place ordinance. It's hard to hold community meetings. It's hard to get community input on exactly what they want to see and where they want to see it. McClellan Ranch Community Gardens, I'm happy to report that is construction, started last week. We are clearing the site. Contractors are going to come in, put in the fencing, grade the site, put in new irrigation, new pathways, and then we'll have a volunteer opportunity to construct the boxes and fill the boxes with new soil and spread wood chips on the remaining pathways. The Quinlan Community Center preschool shade structure, we are currently reevaluating this project. We're looking for a more cost-effective solution to provide the same benefit, but at a lower cost. So we have not really started this project at this time. Again, we're trying to look at other options. Sports Center seismic retrofit. This project was recently awarded, and we plan to start right after Labor Day this year. And since the facility is closed, this is the perfect time to make these renovations, less impact to the customers. Again, we are targeting a end of calendar year to complete this project and be open in time for a January opening. Lawrence Mini Park. We are also making progress here. The city recently approved the purchase of the property. Next Tuesday, it goes to the County Board of Supervisors for their approval. If that happens, we'll execute a purchase and sale agreement and the property becomes ours. The next step in that process would be to annex it into the city and then develop a strategic plan for the development of that parcel. Next up, we have the Stevens Creek Corridor Master Plan. This project was, I would say, 80% complete. And then we received council direction to put it on hold and wait for the outcome or the results of the Parks and Rec Master Plan. That has been recently completed. One of the big questions with the Stevens Creek Corridor Master Plan was, what do we do with Blackberry Farm Golf Course? So one of the projects we put forward this year was a golf course analysis to identify what is the best solution for the golf course and how should we manage that going forward. Based on the results of that study, that will provide input to this master plan and we'll be able to complete it. Next slide, please. So here are some of the projects funded for this year. We have $200,000 for park amenity improvements, which we're going to talk about a little bit more in detail. But again, this provides us an opportunity to put in what I would call minor improvements throughout the city at all the parks. They range from hydration stations, shade structures or shade trees, benches, pickleball courts, pathway improvements. There's a whole laundry list of minor improvements that we can implement so we can get immediate benefit to the community while we're waiting to do some of the longer term strategic plans. Annual playground replacement. This was a project that we put forward based on the need to replace some of the playground equipment in our that is exceeding 20 years in life. They're getting tired. They're looking old. It's harder and harder to find replacement parts. So this was a strategy to replace some of that older equipment with new equipment and possibly put a theme to that playground, possibly add inclusive play equipment, and possibly provide some additional equipment or additional benefits at those playgrounds. And the Blackberry Farm Golf Course Alternatives Analysis, I mentioned that earlier. This again is to figure out what should we do with that facility. The Blue Pheasant owner or operator is set to retire and has indicated he doesn't want to renew the lease. The golf course continues to struggle financially, and we've identified a lot of improvements that need to be made to the course, specifically the irrigation system. So this is an attempt to identify what needs to happen at that course, what's the investment long term, and is that the best answer or direction for the city? And based on what happens there, that input would go again into the Stevens Creek Corridor Master Plan. Okay. So again, this is the annual playground replacement. We're targeting $300,000 annually. It was a fairly straightforward program. We weren't looking to expand the playgrounds. We weren't looking changing locations. It was basically replace the existing equipment with newer equipment, hopefully with a theme, hopefully with some resilient surfacing. Basically just give it a general upgrade to the playgrounds that were the oldest. Again, this is the park amenity improvements. Again, we're targeting an annually funded program at about $200,000 a year. And this would provide the commission with an opportunity to make suggestions as to where they seem or feel that improvements need to be made. And again, while we're waiting to, complete a strategic plan, design and construct a new or renovated park, this would provide us an opportunity to put in some improvements that would provide community benefit at a relatively low cost. The idea is anything that we put in, we could pull out if the park gets renovated in the future. Okay, with that, I think I'll turn that back over to Neil or
back to me. Thanks, Michael. I appreciate that. So as you can tell, Michael seems very busy, as well as Public Works. There's a lot of projects on the docket that affect Parks and Recreation. So tonight, again, most of this information is just to provide a framework about what's going on. But tonight we're here to consider the implementation and evaluation of the strategic plan. And so specifically, we want to talk about the recreation elements and improved comfort and amenities at the park. So again, just to reiterate what Michael touched on: hydration stations, benches, picnic tables, outdoor table tennis, cornhole, shade structures or trees, and pickleball striping. We thought that with the evaluation of these parks, that at the same time, since we're going out to the parks, we could consider evaluating and identifying and recommending potential sites for the satellite community gardens and potential sites for dog off leash areas. So we are recommending that that be done in tandem with this project. We are moving on to the evaluation form. So again, we're proposing 2 evaluation forms just in case you have any feedback of how this is structured, or to give us any insight as to ways we can improve it. But we worked fairly hard to get this evaluation form together to provide to commissioners as well as Parks and Recreation staff and Public Works staff, based on how we decide we're going to evaluate the parks, but to give feedback on all the topics that we just discussed. The pickleball striping topic, the first one, it actually is notated in the master plan what tennis courts are available for pickleball striping. So that's why there's X's next to the specific parks. And then you'll see the other categories. At the end, we decided to put in an other option. Some of the things that have been brought up and the feedback we got from the master park plan was potential mile markers at certain parks, which I must tell you, a lot of your parks are fabulous for installing mile markers because they have big loops with pathways around them. And that's a very low cost amenity. And then other inclusive elements. For example, I finished visiting all 18 parks today. I got my last 4 in. And there are some great swing structures. And we're trying to see if it would be amenable to install potential inclusive swings on the swing set areas. So just trying to identify those areas at the parks. So just another little bit of information. The rating is from 1 to 5, where 1, the item would not be recommended, and 5, it would be highly recommended. So we can speak more about this, but we'll move on to the next evaluation form, which again, just kind of notates the dog park DOLA areas, as well as satellite community garden areas. And again, in the master park plan, we thought this was helpful. These parks were designated as potential sites for the DOLAs, and then potential sites for the community gardens. And so then based on how we determine how we will evaluate the parks, you could provide your feedback again on this form. And then moving on, just wanted to provide a key. This is information that was provided in the master park plan that Gail knows by heart. I don't know if this is table A1 or F2, but she can tell us what it is. But here it talks about the different opportunities. So again, the improved comfort and amenities, pickleball, the DOLAs, as well as the community gardens. And it talks about the opportunities with each of those, potential elements, site selection and distribution, as well as phasing options. So that's just, again, more for your referral. And then moving on, we thought it was important to also provide you the key information from the park master plan about the park descriptions. We have updated this information again from Gail, who provided us information on when the parks were last renovated. And so that is helpful information as well to determine what parks are oldest or have the oldest equipment in them. So that might help us in our decision making as far as what we evaluate and how. And again, was notated the vision and focus for each park, recent planned improvements, as well as immediate and short-term opportunities. So again, this is all relevant information to this project specifically that will help us in determining how we tackle spending this $200,000. So if you could move on, sorry, this is again the small neighborhood parks, special sites. We thought it was also important to include a map of the existing parks, and so that you could kind of, visually see how spread out they all are amongst the city. And I just have to say, it would be a tragedy not to recognize how magnificent your parks are in Cupertino. I feel so lucky to be here. I have toured them all and they are amazing and quite large, actually. I'm shocked by how large your parks are. So very lucky. So in red, we have notated that Creekside, Jollyman, and Varian are part of the capital improvement projects, with Jollyman being the all-inclusive park upgrade, and then Varian and Creekside being on the docket for playground equipment replacement. So that's helpful in just kind of notating where parks that are going to be receiving upgrades are going to be. And then finally, we want to talk about next steps. And this is kind of the most important aspect of the whole process. So again, we want to get your feedback about the evaluation form, but mostly we want to discuss how to proceed. And so there are different ways we can proceed in the implementation process. We can choose to evaluate parks on the east side, parks on the west side, parks on the south side. We can choose to evaluate the oldest parks and start there. We do not recommend evaluating all of the parks, just for the simple fact that as far as time and bandwidth, it's probably not doable to evaluate 18 parks, and with COVID, it's challenging to do that. So we can evaluate in batches. We can start with 5 or 6, and then if we still have money left over based on the prioritization of that, then we can visit the next 3 or 4, and then we can have subgroups to evaluate, or we can have all commissioners go to the same 5 parks. So again, I would prefer to pick a number of parks, again, based on however you decide or want to recommend us to proceed. But I would pick a number around a third of the parks, 5 or 6, and I would, evaluate based on location and age of the parks. That's staff's recommendation. But we're happy to discuss and answer any questions and move back to any of the slides for your reference.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Giovanna. Hopefully, this is going to be another fun thing. We're going to start on it. And let's see. So let's start with clarifying questions. And within our commissioners, I do see Commissioner Nisha Tampe raise her hand. Please go ahead.
Great. Chair, can I say not a personal comment, but a comprehension comment for this whole presentation that might help the whole commission?
Or you want to start with a comment and then go on to your clarification question?
Yeah, it's not like it's not an opinion comment.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so just to kind of frame this a little bit, we did the whole master plan, which is a really meaty document, and essentially the city council gave us $200,000 to do something this year. So essentially what in our subcommittee meeting, what we thought of was there's no way that we can take on the whole thing at one time. So we're going to split it into two parts, which is actually what we as a commission had discussed before. And that is short term. So the low hanging fruit that we can easily see some kind of turnaround, the community is going to see some benefit from, which is super needed, especially in the time of COVID. And then also having a long term. But right now, what this presentation is for the short term.
Okay.
It's for that 200K of what we can change, what we can add, and then we're not ignoring the long term, but we're going to look at the long term in end of Q3, Q4 of this year, because we want to make sure we get started on actually start doing things and implementing things. So that's what we're looking at here.
Okay, great. That helps. Yeah. Yeah, that kind of overview definitely helps. Thank you.
And then my clarifying question. Actually, no, it's a comment. So I'll
Sure. Any other clarification questions from any commissioners? Looks like everybody's ready to jump onto the discussion and comment. So I'll wait for it. So only one question I have it, since nobody has asked it. I just wanted to make sure that otherwise John will be really upset. I said, come on, nobody is asking any questions. So let me start that one question. So all these things are supposed to be done in 2021, correct? There's this 200,000. That's the only thing you're asking for. Should be spent between for the 2020 and 21 financial year 2021, right?
Correct.
Excellent. The second question I had was, since you called out the funded projects from a capital improvement, does it mean that the $200,000, the short-term funding, is not going to be applicable on it, or it can go as well? When I say funded projects on those three parts with Circle of Jollyman and I think I forgot the other two, Creekside and Variant.
Yes.
So it says that it is funded projects. Could you explain what that means and how this is applicable to this discussion we are going to have on the 200,000? Are these parks are eligible to be also considered for the other improvements?
They are. We just wanted to point out that they have separate funding for separate items. So we just wanted to, paint the picture that these parks will get upgrades. Not necessarily the ones we're talking about, but we thought it was helpful to let you know that there was funding going to that separate from the 200,000 that we're talking about.
Okay, thank you. I think that's kind of, maybe we'll discuss more on the discussion side of it. Since I don't have any more questions on it, I just wanted to open up to the public comments, if any. I'm sure that I still have Jennifer raise hand. Hello, Jennifer, I'm going to allow you to talk.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, hi, I'm Jennifer Griffin. That was an excellent presentation. I think it's always wonderful to see all the parks that we do have, and it's really nice that they are looking at funding for upgrades for some of the parks, because I don't think a lot of people realize that parks do need loving, tender care, and their facilities get older and they need new roofs and new chairs inside, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm really glad that the city has put that into the budget for the upkeep of the parks. And I really like to see that, especially in the future, that they think about what types of upgrades the buildings will need, like specifically at Creekside. I've actually gone to some meetings there, and they have really nice facilities. But then again, you realize that down the road that there are tables and chairs, and do they have, like, okay, at Creekside, if they're holding meetings there in non-COVID times one of these days, do they have Wi-Fi in there? Do they have places where people can bring their, handhelds or et cetera, and plug them in, use them, et cetera, during the meetings? I had never even thought about that. But funding money toward having money available for that type of thing might be a really good thing to do down the road. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer. And with that, I think I don't see any more public available right now. So let's open it up for the commissioners to get on to our comments and the discussions. But I just wanted to make sure just want to set the stage. This is mainly to go with the recommendation, which I think Director Joanne and the staff presented it, both Michael and Gabe. So this is about how do we want to spend those $200,000, and especially how do we pick the parks based on what category. And I know Dr. Joanne recommended on specific ones, but I think it'll be good for the commissioners to brainstorm and give some inputs on what would be a best way to do it. And at the end of it, I do expect that I think we will have to pass a motion on what the recommendations are. I think that's what I think Dr. Joanne you're looking for. That's the objective of this presentation. So with that, I'll open it up for any discussions inside. I saw some hands raised for any comments or questions. I don't see any more now. Is that true? Or I'm seeing something? Oh, good. Okay, that cannot be possible. Okay, because I don't see any hand. I said, how come? No. So Commissioner Nisha, please.
Okay, so I actually do. So again, this is not us deciding right now what we're doing. This is just what we wanted to do in the subcommittee meeting, was make sure that we brought it and got approval from the commission and input on how we're going to make the decision. So that way later on down the road, when we're trying to actually pick the individual things, then we all understand the process with which we came to. So I had a couple of things that I wanted to ask, and then one or two things that I wanted to comment on. So Michael, you had mentioned this is the preliminary part of the presentation. You mentioned that we're starting to work on the community gardens, yes?
Yes. At McClellan.
At McClellan, yeah. So it was my understanding that the city council opted not to have regular construction of the whole thing and wanted community members to be involved. So how's that? I'm just curious how that's going to work during COVID.
Actually, if you wouldn't mind, if we come back to you at the next meeting about that information, that would be helpful, because I have like a whole presentation to give you on that.
Cool. Sounds great. Okay. Well, then really exciting about Lawrence Mitty. I'm happy to see that going through. One thing with the golf course study, I would be really excited to help in any way I can and participate and do legwork on that. It's been a point of interest for me for a number of years, and especially seeing how our users were going to Deep Cliff when there were some lack of access to golf carts and things like that. It does show that Deep Cliff is a viable option for golfers. So I would be really, really interested to support in any way I can help with that. And so please do let me know. So a couple of things in terms of that form. The one thing I did want to bring up is that there was a cornhole field, and it would be great to replace that with basketball, because in the master plan, there was much more of an emphasis on the need for basketball courts rather than cornhole. And I think that that's pretty significant. There was a pretty huge diversity that was represented in that. And so I just want to I want to see if we can flip that cornhole for basketball, and then cornhole can be incorporated into the alternative other section. And then in terms of the next steps, in terms of the next steps at the very end, in our strategic plan meeting, and I don't know if maybe this was just said at the very end, but we would really like to, and my recommendation is actually outside of those few bullet points, and I think we had actually talked about this in our meeting, but I think that it's very important at this time for all of us commissioners to use this COVID time to go to every single park and get a really comprehensive in-person understanding of what is there, what can be there, because that will really fuel our vision for what we can see with the parks in Cupertino. I know it's a big ask to go to 18 parks, but like, let's be honest, you can drive from one end of the city to the other in like 10 minutes. So it's not that big. But I think that it's really important for us all to take, the next month or month and a half to commit to going to these parks in its entirety, rather than focusing piecemeal. I just would really like to see this kind of comprehensively done and all together, so that when we're looking at the big picture of these low-hanging fruit, then we'll make sure that we're doing it across the city and in places that are relevant. So that would be my recommendation for how we as commissioners can proceed in the next month or month and a half.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Nisha. And any other commissioners? I think looks like it's okay. I see it. Thank you. Maybe it's getting 9 o'clock. Everybody's hungry. So, okay. We'll close it soon. Commissioner Carroll, so please.
So we're talking about the $200,000 that we've been allocated, and that's for basically this this matrix that we're looking here. But then there's also the 300,000. Is that right, for the satellite gardens?
Correct.
So that's a separate pot of money that is available for us. So I didn't want us to lose sight of that. Also, in looking at this, I understand the director I think she was trying to save us from going to all the parks. And I appreciate that, but it's kind of hard to know if you've gotten the best result if you actually don't visit them and if you haven't evaluated them. So how do we know that we're doing the right thing if we just do a subset of them at this time? So I think it's worth taking the time, as Nisha said, to go to the parks. And I guess it's up to the whole commission if you feel, if you don't have the availability to do that, or what you think about that. If you have a way to cut this back, to do fewer of them, I'd listen to it, but I don't know how we can get a good view of our priorities if we don't look at the whole picture. So that is my concern about just doing a subset. I think basketball is an area that I agree with Nisha on that. I don't know if we could add another column to this. It makes it kind of small, or if we just put cornhole in the other, like Nisha suggested. In looking at some of these, if we give them a rating from 1 to 5, 5 being highly recommend, if we look at some of these things and we say, we would highly recommend that we do some particular thing at all the parks, I think we're going to have an issue of prioritizing. So I think we need a way to somehow prioritize it. And especially when you get to the satellite gardens or the DOLA review, that you may say, yes, this would be a good place in a particular park, but we also need some way to prioritize it. And if you have 3 or 4 of them, you'd say, these are my top 2. I would think that would be very important for us to understand, as well as you look at deciding for the DOLAs and gardens. It would be helpful to know where you're looking at. Some of these parks are big, and so understanding what particular corner you think would be useful and why. So I think when that ask came to us before, what I did was I took pictures and said, here's a corner of a particular park that I think could be useful because it's not being used for anything else. And so I think that's the kind of information we're going to be looking for. Maybe that's a second pass at it. I don't know, but those are some of my thoughts of the kind of information that we're looking for.
Okay, great. Thank you. And let's go to the next commissioner. Now I think everybody raised it. So Commissioner Mina.
And thank you for the presentation. I'm just have a question about the rating form. Some park they checked it's in master plan. Would this affect the rating, or our rating just be independent from the first column? Because the first column they checked some park already in master plan.
So that's only specifically for pickleball striping. So that just lets you know there's tennis courts at that park. So those are the only parks available for pickle striping. Pickleball striping. Pickle striping. That's a new thing.
And here several parks they checked. So all these large neighborhood parks had checked. What does that mean?
So that means in the process of the master park plan being put together, these are what were the recommended areas to consider for DOLAs and satellite community gardens. And I'll respond to all the commissioners' questions at the end, but just trying to give some clarification.
Okay. So our rating can we can still provide some independent opinion for our rating. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And next, Commissioner Sashi, you have it. The floor is yours.
I was trying to talk with mute on as usual. Going back to the one, going back to the other form, we're trying to figure out. I'm a little confused as to what we're trying to do here. We're going to give a rating of all of these community parks, a 1 to 5, on whether we should have a pickleball, hydration station, whatever, in each of these parks, and that adds up to 200K.
No, so we want your, sorry.
Go ahead.
So we want your feedback. So again, this is just to provide feedback about what you think is necessary at these parks. To be honest with you, some of the benches or the current drinking fountains could just use a coat of paint, and you may not need to replace anything. We're trying to get your feedback. We're going to give our own feedback as Park and Rec staff as well as Public Works. And then we're going to prioritize based on all of our feedback what the top 10 things are and then how much those will cost. And then we will determine, can we do the top 10? Can we do the top 20? So this is going to help us with the rating to figure out what our top priorities are.
We give you that rating, you are going to prioritize, you said, and what is your criteria for prioritizing?
So we'll give you, so if 10 people think that Memorial Park is a 5 for garbage cans, that's going to be one of the top things, right? So then based on those things that rate really high, then we're going to have to come back and have an additional conversation about cost and prioritization. So this is step 1 of many steps.
Okay, so the prioritization will be something that you will do subsequently. This is just a rating of what you think each park would need. Okay. And I guess in that case, I would agree with, both Commissioner Nisha and Commissioner Carol that we would have to visit everything to figure out whether if the garbage can needs to be replaced or how do we rate it without looking at it.
Okay.
I would agree.
Go ahead. I was about to say that, but I'll wait for my turn.
That's it.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think next, Commissioner Nisha again. Done. Maybe let's see. Nisha, I think you're unmuted.
Sorry. Also, one of the things that we wanted to be super mindful of, Commissioner Becker, was that we didn't want this to be like, okay, we rate and then that's it. We have no we don't know we just see the total and we explicitly go based off of that. It will be coming back as a discussion. This is to help us understand what the general priorities are, and then we'll come back to discuss it, because it is possible when the community also comes to a meeting or when we hear each other's perspectives that there's rationale that might change the way that we feel about something, or prioritization. Like if you prioritized, a basketball court at, I don't know, Franco Park, and I was like, no, it's more important to put a fountain at Three Oaks. And then you're like, oh, well, actually, this community is very basketball friendly and would like a lot. And I go, oh, okay, well, I guess we don't need to do this hydration station at this one other park if it's more relevant. So we want to make sure that we're keeping we're keeping room for that conversation. That's it.
Here.
So Paul, I don't know if you're on mute and you're trying to speak.
I thought I unmuted because I unmuted everyone and I muted myself. That's, what, this is what my son always says. You try to talk to someone and nobody is there, but no, you were there and I'm not talking to. So sorry. So what I was asking is that couple of questions to Director as well as Michael. While assuming that, I think it looks like you, maybe let me rephrase it and then you can correct me, Director Joanne. You are taking one input from us and you have many other inputs also feeding into your decision making or prioritization. One is from commissioners. If I heard you correctly, then you will have your own staff assessing these, because sometimes, as you said, yeah, maybe I will look at the fountain and if it's kind of look like completely rusted or something, I may think, oh my God, we need to replace it. But you may come back or the public works or your staff may come back and say, no, that's just a paint, whatever. I think you will make a call. And you're going to put all these three inputs together to make the priority. I totally understand if that is the goal. The one ask is that our question to you is that if assuming that as commissioners proposed, if we have to go to 18 parks, assuming that we all go and provide whatever the inputs we can on inputs, do you feel like, I know you visited all the 18 now, do you have the resources for the staff and the public works are ready to go on to visit too? Because if all the three inputs, I want to make sure that you're also ready to do and get things done in that 200,000, which you're going to spend it in limited time, whatever the time, because you need to procure and do all of them. So can you just share some ideas on when do you think that you will complete your side of the assessments so that you can put together? Is there any timeline you are looking for?
Yeah, I appreciate the question and actually wanted to speak to that for all the commissioners. So when we were meeting as a subcommittee, I definitely was very interested in visiting all 18 parks and getting feedback on all the 18 parks. However, for example, today I visited 3 parks and the dog park, and it took me over an hour and a half. And I literally ran through every park that I parked at and got to. And I wasn't able to take any notes because I was feverishly just trying to see them all. I went to Creekside yesterday, and that is such a large space where the playgrounds are very separated. So I think that as I was putting together this PowerPoint presentation, I came to the realization that visiting all 18 parks is a very challenging and it's a tall order. And I don't feel like staff really would have the bandwidth to visit all 18 and appropriately rate all of these items in a timely fashion. It may take quite a long time to get that feedback, as well as from commissioners. So again, I think I was overzealous in proposing that we visit all 18.
So maybe just a follow-up question, I think before I let the other commissioner to have. So if that is the case, I'm trying to see what is the baseline we want to start, because if I just look at it, yes, I think I'll go with the commission that we need to visit all of those parks, kind of. But that may be only one data point which may cover 18. But if the staff and the public works has a limited bandwidth or whatever, they can visit only based on the data. I'm trying to see, is there any prior data available which they can say, like, I know you talked about old parks, or you talked about last time when it was revised, kind of. It will be good to have some data for us to even to start with that will help us, okay, which way we need to go. So for me, I don't have any problem in going and all of them. I'm trying to see how it is going to come together. That's a kind of a confusion I have, how it is going to be planned. But anyway, so let's put some of the commissioners have maybe comments and on that part, maybe then we will come back. That's the only part I'm not sure how you're going to achieve that, Director.
So can I just address a couple other questions that came up that I think are appropriate to discuss potentially now? We did end up leaving basketball courts off of this evaluation form, and it was strategic in nature because of the costliness in order to expand a basketball court. So that is something that we will look at again towards more of a long term. So we wanted to be able to evaluate, and $200,000 sounds like a lot of money, but a shade structure could be $30,000 at one park. And so I think that if we could determine, let's look at these first 5 parks, and maybe they're the oldest. Let's look at those and then determine what the priorities are, determine the costs, and then maybe we have still $75,000 left over after we make our suggestions and recommendations, and then we visit the next 5 oldest parks. So I'm not saying that we won't visit all of the parks or that we're not going to pay attention to all of the parks. I just feel like in order to give us a realistic starting point and get some traction, it might be, and also we might get some feedback like change the form, or, we want to, to change how we're doing the rating. So I think it might be helpful to start small. And so that would just be my recommendation. The other thing that I wanted to mention is about the community gardens that Commissioner Stanek brought up. And so your recommendation about taking photos or providing feedback is great. But in addition to that, staff will have to evaluate the possibility of irrigation and all kinds of other things that come into play. So, the spot might look like it's a good location for that, but we will have to vet other items associated with that. So again, we're still at the feedback stage. And I just think that's important to note as well.
Okay, thank you. And let's, I think a couple of commissioners wanted to add or share some of their comments. So Commissioner Mina, I think it's yours, please.
I still have question about the reading table. So at first, my understanding was that, for example, for the hydration stations, we just rate them from 1 to 5. That means we pick the park that maybe have the oldest facility. We just rate it 5. But then after I heard the discussion, I think maybe I misunderstood the question. So if all the park, the hydration station looks still okay, but some park, the bench, the picnic table is very old. So I should not rate 5 to any of the hydration station. I only gave rating 5 to the bench and table. We need to compare not only by single column, but between these, among these columns. Is this right?
And I think that this becomes more apparent when you visit the parks. I mean, I think that in my evaluation, I was looking at all of these features and items when I was visiting the parks in the last month. And, I think it jumps out at you the things that do need replacement or updating. There are several really old school water fountains, but then there are, the newer fountains that are high functioning. So as far as hydration stations go, there's definitely a differentiation of the types of garbage cans. There's a differentiation of benches and picnic tables. Some are concrete, some are wood, some just need paint. There are very many opportunities for shade structures over picnic areas. And then again, a lot of the low-hanging fruit items, I would say, are inclusive elements, potentially putting cornhole at a certain park that has an open space. Mile markers could be done at many of these parks. But again, it's just how do we want to evaluate? And I just don't want us to bite off more than we can chew.
Okay, thank you. And I think let me go to the next one. I think Nisha, Commissioner Nisha. Or maybe before, sorry, I know Commissioner Nisha, if you don't mind, I think Assistant Director Christine raised her hand, maybe to give some explanation, I hope. Let me allow Christine.
Yes, thank you. Hello.
Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify, and Joanne, please correct me if I'm wrong, but we are providing ratings, not rankings. There is a difference. So for example, in looking at this sheet, the hydration station, it is very likely that when you go out to every one of our parks that you highly recommend that a hydration station should be at each of the parks. Therefore, a 5 could possibly be applied to each of the locations. I felt that Commissioner Mina was, I thought maybe I misunderstood the question, was that there was a thought perhaps that we were ranking the priority of which site should get a hydration station. Is that correct? I just wanted to clarify that. So in my mind, you could visit all the sites and say, you know what, I think a hydration station is, we're recommending it at all the sites. Therefore, there could be a 5 appearing for each of the park locations, as opposed to maybe, you might go to another facility that perhaps, like the pickleball striping, obviously you're going to be limited to only 3 sites that you are going to be viewing. And maybe not all 3 of those sites are going to be highly recommended as a location for pickleball striping. So I apologize if I misunderstood, but I was sensing that there was maybe some misunderstanding about ranking versus rating those amenities.
That's a good clarification. Thank you.
Yeah, so maybe this is addressed to, I think, Commissioner Mina's, Commissioner Nisha, if you don't mind. I just wanted to see whether Commissioner Mina's question was clarified. I think that's addressed directly. So I just allowed Commissioner Mina to. I think you're muted as well. I'm trying to unmute, I couldn't.
Yeah, when I first saw this table, my understanding, is like ranking. So for each column, we just gave a ranking. Yeah, that was my first understanding. And then after the discussion, I realized I need to pick something really, we think that's a great need and really necessary to do it. We put it, rated 5. Not every column we rate some 5. It's not necessary we put 5 in every column, pick the highest ranking. Yeah, that's what I understand. Thank you for the explanation.
Thank you. Now, sorry, Commissioner Nisha. Now I'm sorry. Yeah, you can please go ahead.
Thank you, Christine. That was, I think that was a perfect explanation and a really helpful clarification. So I understand that this is definitely a heavy lift. In terms of, I think there's a difference between, staff has a lot going on, as do we all. But I think the expectation for commissioners can be different than the expectation on staff. And so I think that's something I want to make sure that we differentiate. It is our responsibility as public servants, appointed public servants, to go to all these places. So it is tough for us. I'm not saying it's easy, but I do think that at least the commissioners should be, I would really, really, really like for at least the commissioners to go to all of them. And then if we maybe want to give staff a separate priority set, optimization, so they don't have to go to all of them, or maybe a certain subset go to one set and not another set, I think that's totally doable. But I do think that my recommendation would still be, at least for the commissioners, to go to all of them, because it's important for us to have that visioning, that visioning when we're going through the whole thing. And then I'm actually going to push back a little bit on cornhole. I candidly, Gail, maybe you can speak to this a little bit, but I don't really recall that being super prominent in the master plan, even for low-hanging fruit. And basketball courts were really, really big I don't play basketball. I don't like basketball. Last time I tried to play basketball, I was hit in the face with a basketball and my nose bled. So it is not a personal agenda item. I really couldn't care less. But because it was in the master plan, I think that's something we can focus on. It can be really expensive, but there are also alternative costs, which I know the city council is really keen on finding ways that we can support the community and give the community what they want, but at a price point that is more appropriate for what we have available. And so there are things like asphalt blacktops that actually, you know, the turf blacktops that are like bouncy are several thousands of, like, you know, they're like $50,000. They're very expensive. But asphalt basketball courts, which is actually fairly cheap, are between $11,000 and $18,000. So I would like to add that back specifically and move cornhole off, because that wasn't a part of that wasn't a key finding. And I think basketball courts are really crucial. So I would like to ask that be added back in, or replace the cornhole, because I just don't know where that came from. Although I do like cornhole and I play cornhole. So this is contrary to my personal play activity. But yeah, I would really, you know, once we finish our final comments, I would like for us, at least the commissioners, to go to every single one. I think that's really important.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. I think I was thinking at how do I get my exercise and the steps to get onto it. Maybe thank you for forcing us to get out and do it. Absolutely. With that, I think I see Commissioner Sashi Aswal wanted to share some comments. Please.
Let's say we go to all the parks. You know, you're going to get your 12,000 steps per day.
Thank you.
So will I. But my question comes back to this thing. I'm looking at, let's say, the hydration stations. So I look at what's there and I decide whether it's what needs to be replaced or we need more. What am I looking at?
And maybe Dr. Joanne, can you respond on?
I think, I mean, we would love to put new hydration stations at every single park, right? The bottle filling, dog bowl, hydration station at all parks. But there are parks that are in more dire need of an upgraded hydration station over others. So there is a differentiation when you go to the parks. It's just very obvious to see the different years when things were implemented. So I think that it will become very apparent to you after you visit several parks.
Completely clueless about hydration stations. It's, I mean, I've seen the latest ones, and yeah, that would be cool to have those with the bottle and for the dogs. But I mean, most of the parks that I have seen around here have the regular, you know, press that thing and the fountain comes up, which you can sometimes catch and sometimes not catch the water from. So am I testing each one of those? Because I'm not signing up for that, but are you saying just like
oh, that's important.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I'm just gonna look at it and be able to tell that this needs replacement just because of the status of the thing.
And it may just be that, you know, you're gonna see the stone one from 1975 with the wood, you know, platter, you know, the wood base that the water runs off into the ground, or you'll see an upgraded one. So, you know, I think it will be quite apparent. Or you may say there's no water fountain near here, or you know, I think a water fountain should be in this location. Sorry, my dog.
Okay, no, that's fine. So okay, so that makes it clearer for me. Now the follow-on question to that is, for example, Linda Vista, very close to where I live, that has those stone things which were built whenever, but then not a lot of people go to Linda Vista. How do I rate that? I mean, I rate that for Linda Vista, but how does that priority change? Because honestly, not a lot of people go to Linda Vista. Lots of people go to, you know, where I am, Jollyman's very popular, Three Oaks is very popular, Memorial Park is very popular, but very few people even, I don't know if they even know there's Linda Vista. Very quiet park. But yeah, the water fountains there are from way back when. The benches seriously need some upgrade.
Yeah, I think Christine, Assistant Director, wants to say something, I believe. Go ahead, please.
I'm
Christine.
sorry. I'm going to add something else to consider along those lines, Commissioner Baker. When you're going out there and you're evaluating the parks, I think what you will see is that there are certain parks that have a character about them, or the fact that they are larger or are utilized for athletic sports. So, for example, just from my experience in being here, if I went to Creekside Park, you will see that there's a large loop around the park. If you go in the early morning, there's a lot of people walking. If you go in the afternoon during non-COVID time, you will see a lot of soccer players. In my mind, that's a great location for a hydration station. There's a lot of physical activity there. Now, if you go to another park, like a smaller park, like Franco Park, that is nestled within homes where people might just be, walking to their local park to utilize the playground with their children. Maybe there's not as much physical activity. Maybe there's not a loop that lends itself to walking. Maybe there are not athletic sports. So maybe that's not as much of a priority for that particular item. But I think when you get out there and you see the makeup of the parks and you see the characters and you see the location, I think then it'll begin to come together as to what might make sense for these various elements. That's just how I would look at it when you're going out there.
Okay, I think that.
Yeah, I hope that helps.
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, I took one of the bigger parks and I live next to it, so I know how little it's used. And it's got some fantastic equipment. If somebody wants to actually use it, you can do, planks and stuff. I mean, it's a good park. But
beautiful.
For some reason, since it's nestled by the hills, very few people go there.
Yes, it's tucked away. I think it's a little hidden gem there.
Yes.
Yeah.
So maybe Michael wanted to add something, I believe I see. Yes, Michael, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to remind everybody that we plan on this to be an annual program. So we're hoping to get a minimum of $200,000 each year. But one of the things the council looks at is, what was your evaluation process and how did you pick what went where? And number two, did you spend the money? So, we start putting together our CIP fairly early. And by March, we're having meetings with the council. May, we have a. So I would like to be able to tell them that the money has either been programmed or spent. So we can make a case for the next year's funding. If they said, well, we gave you $200,000 and you haven't spent anything yet,
yeah,
that looks bad. And they see no reason to fund for the next year. So I think there's plenty of demand. And I think that we can very easily spend this money. But I want to make sure that we don't spend too much time, analyzing everything. The whole idea was, let's get some community benefit out of here, out there quicker. And if we identify more need than what we have funding for, we can come back later and say, look, we had all this input and we actually have $300,000 worth of need or $400,000 worth of need. And that helps justify, a minimum level of funding of $200,000 annually. So just keep that in mind, because
sure,
if we can demonstrate that we're doing money, there's a better chance that we get additional funding subsequent years.
Great. Thanks, Mike. I think that's really helped. So, okay, this is not a one-stop shop kind of one thing. Rather, it is a continuous process where we do it. I think that's what you are reiterating it. Understand. Thank you. And I do have
one more comment. I was just thinking, if we were to do this sort of in, if you do this criteria, like, taking, I don't mean to beat up the example I gave, but Linda Vista requires the hydration stations to be updated. However, we do the priority, which is going to be in a subsequent meeting or time frame, we can decide which park gets the highest priority and what needs based on the usage or something like that. So it definitely needs an upgrade. The question is whether it gets the upgrade this year or next year. Is we don't have to reevaluate this whole thing again next year.
I agree.
Okay.
Maybe let's go to the other commissioner. Carol, I think you want to share something, and then possibly we might be able to wrap it up with some motion there. So please, Commissioner
Okay,
Carol.
thank you. Yeah, this is different than some of the other comments. It has to do with the other column. So there are two things that are identified there. One is mile markers, which seems to be kind of an old school thing, because I think most people track their steps on their electronic devices, on their wrists and all of that. It may be a cheap thing, but it seems like a kind of an old school kind of thing to me. I'm wondering how big of a demand there is for that. And then inclusive elements. So I guess Joanne gave the example of inclusive swings, but I'm wondering if there are other things that we're not thinking of that would be in this other category that we should be having in our mind. And if we had a list of what those examples could be.
Well, I think that the reason why I use the swing as the example is because it's the easiest one to implement. And so I mean, I probably should say inclusive swings instead of elements, because other ones are more difficult to, put in. I would just make a comment about the mile markers in the park that I used to oversee. We put the mile markers in and you could not believe how many more people you saw. And it's almost because they realized how far a lap was. And so they realized that they could do 3 laps in a mile. And so even though a lot of people do have digital devices, there are a lot of people that don't have any digital devices. And we had a lot of, older generation that was walking because the mile markers were there and they knew the distance they were going. So that's, again, I know it is old school. It's just another tidbit of information though.
Okay, are there other things that we should have in mind for the other?
Well, we can put cornhole over there. I wanted Gail to speak to the basketball court stuff.
Yes, thank you, Joanne. We did hear high desire for basketball, at high interest across every category of user, and we don't have outside city full-size basketball courts. That's a high interest item. It is in table F3 in the appendix of the Parks and Rec System Master Plan. Building a brand new basketball court full size with the right kind of pavement that's going to be durable and so on, it's pretty expensive. It's over $200,000 to do a CIP to do that. Hence, we didn't put it in this current chart as a thing to identify for a quick win, low-hanging fruit. A brand new court would need to be proposed as a capital improvement project. That being said, if we're already going to be looking at the sites and we know what a high interest item this is, it could be very useful to staff and Michael, our capital improvement program manager, to have information from the commission about what sites they deem the most suitable, whether to expand an existing half or partial court at a current site or sites to add a new one. I think that could be valuable information to capture, as long as the expectation isn't that we're going to be able to build one in October based on your immediate feedback.
Okay, if that explains, and I'm going to Nisha, Commissioner Nisha, and then I have Commissioner Sashi as well. Hopefully we will come to an end. Let's see.
That context is really helpful. Thank you. And I would still like to see the basketball courts on here. It was high interest. Great. That's going to be important. So I was just going to make a motion. So
hold on. So Commissioner, I think Commissioner Sashi also wants to talk something. So there's another hand raised.
Quick question. When we looked at the community gardens, are we restricting it only to the parks, or can it be in any general public area that has access?
We're restricting it to the parks for your evaluation and feedback. Again, $300,000 is not a ton of money, so we want to start with the parks. And then the other information that I wanted to consider, Nisha, if you would consider, could we add the basketball locations with the master park plan locations on this form as opposed to the other form as potential locations, so that it also has, the similar formatting?
Yeah, that seems fine.
Okay. Look, I think that's pretty much looks like. So we had a pretty good discussion, and I think Commissioner, anyone wants to make a motion. I think I do see a couple of things. Maybe let me reiterate. One is for the way to evaluate this box. I think if you could go back to the next steps, if you don't mind, Whitney or whoever is running the slide. If I say that, okay, one is that, okay, how do you want to do it? I think it looks like that's the one thing we wanted to, and it looks like we have to get some exercise. Somebody's forcing us, but it's good. That's one. And the second one is that if any alterations to be done on the evaluation form, I think like two, and it can be combined as a motion and then do it, or if you want to do it separate, I'm fine with it. So let's go ahead, and yeah, I'm looking for a motion.
I think it's a point of clarification. Joanne, do we actually need a motion to approve the form itself? No, right? We can just make those relevant changes. Okay, great.
Okay, that's input. Okay, that's just an input for you. Okay, that's good. Then
Can I ask one more question? Can we identify a timeline for feedback to be expected once we get the evaluation form updated into you all?
Yeah, please don't tell me tomorrow. I cannot do 12,000 steps in it's all the parts. And I know Joanne is saying, I'm struggling too much. Why not you go, Paul? And the commissioners. Thank you. Do you have, maybe before we go on to it, maybe I'll ask you, Director Joanne, do you have any time when you're expecting that this has to be done before we come up with some? Because I know we will, but is there anything you're expecting it so that you have your other plans to tie up and find out?
Well, so just to kind of give you an idea of how long this will take is, once we get your feedback, we'll have to analyze all the data and be able to present it to you, and then have a discussion about the prioritization. So, depending on how long you all take to get that information back to us, it again, puts it out, a month ahead of time. So I would say we need at least a week before a meeting to get the information together. And I think that's really kind of cutting it close.
Okay, 2 weeks, kind of, 2 to 3 weeks is what you're looking at it, so that you have 1 week to work on it before you present it. Okay. So with that, I think anyone, please go ahead and go for a motion.
So I'll go ahead.
So you have one more question? Okay.
Oh, no, that was a question. I was just going to make the motion.
Please.
I move for all the commissioners to review all parks for the 200 or however, the low-hanging fruit option for master plan, the master plan strategic plan initial phase of implementation for the rating portion of it for us to do that all. I will go into, do you want me to go into timing? It doesn't need to be in the motion, right? Okay, cool. That's my motion.
Okay.
Can you repeat that?
Repeat? Yeah, I was about to ask. Maybe you can simplify and repeat it. Yeah.
I move that all commissioners review all parks for this initial phase of the strategic plan implementation for short-term projects.
Okay. That makes more clear now. Thank you. So, Commissioner Nisha,
yep.
On a motion, and I'm looking for a second. Yeah, I'm looking.
Okay, I can second it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Somebody did?
Yeah, it's okay. I think I supposed to lower the hand. I forgot, but it's okay. I'm sure Commissioner Carroll, you are also about to second, I believe. But as long as it is seconded, it's good. I thought maybe for the discussion. Hopefully that's not now. So now, since seconded it, and is there any discussion, please? Good. There's no discussion on it. So Commissioner Nisha passed the motion, proposed, and then seconded by Commissioner Sashi. And then let's go for a vote. Whitney, please.
Chair Kumarapan?
Aye.
Vice Chair Stanek?
Aye.
Commissioner Tombe?
Aye.
Commissioner Bigor?
Yes.
And Commissioner Shu?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great. That's 5 out of 5. Sorry?
Chair, may I make a recommendation?
Sure.
I recommend that the commissioners finish by the start of the next meeting, and then we hold a special meeting specifically to talk about prioritization in a second meeting in the middle of September. The rationale behind that is, given the length and the kind of things that we have to cover during our actual meetings, we will need time to properly spend on this. It's going to be a meaty meeting. So my recommendation would be all of us finish by the next meeting and submit it, and we can do a review, making sure everybody submitted it by the next meeting, and then we can give staff 2 to 3 weeks to parse through that data, and then maybe second, third, or fourth week of September we have a special meeting specifically for this.
Maybe first I just want to close that the motion passed with the 5 out of 5 for all the people, right? And then one thing is that everybody has to submit their number of steps. So I just want to make sure that after they finish it, so it's easy for us to see it. But on the recommendation, I think maybe if I understand correctly, Commissioner Nisha, so you want to make sure that we do it before the start of the next meeting, and then we'll have a special meeting for this particular thing alone. Is that?
Yes, because my concern with I think 2 weeks is probably too short of a time to visit 18 parks. And so we would probably need a full month. I think that's reasonable. But to push it to October, I think, Michael was very accurate in his statement that we want to kind of get this stuff moving. So we will need to, and to do this in one meeting and not do any other agenda item seems ill-advised. So it seems like a good idea for us to just have an independent conversation about this.
Okay, the only thing is that personally, I don't want to get another special meeting on these meetings. That's the only thing personally I have it. But at the timeline, I don't know, maybe Director Joanne, so let's quickly check. Is that will match with your assessment too? Because when we do, it's not just our assessment. You have your own assessment. Do you think that will match with, if you take 1 month, from now until the next start of the meeting, and then you have your assessment and you put together, and then that's where you will come after the special meeting? Do you think?
I think we can accommodate that. And I just wanted to also recognize Michael and Gail for staying on so late tonight with us. And we appreciate all your information that you provided in helping us get through this item.
Okay, so looks like that's the recommendation. I don't think that we will strive for it. We will try to get it by next, and I don't know whether we need to vote for it. Maybe I think I should specifically just want to say this is a recommendation. I hope, given that agency will take 4 months, or it's not 4 weeks, not 4 months, that's bad, 4 weeks to really get the data, and then we'll provide you. And I hope you will send us these forms and how do we really input, and then so that you get all the data, right? I think we will get the notification from you, Whitney, I hope, so that we can go and enter all these into the shared drive or wherever, and then you will come back. Okay, that is a case. Looks like Commissioner Carroll want to say something, and she may want to do quickly. Let's see, or maybe long.
The chair wants me to do it quickly. It's a quick question, and that is, do we know what the forms? Are there any changes that we expect to see on the forms based on the input tonight? I was confused about that.
Yeah, we'll update the forms and send the new ones tomorrow.
Especially on the basketball one, that's what I heard. In the second form, you will add a basketball thing, and then you will send it out. Okay.
Yeah, we will designate
I think with that. It looks like we have. Sorry, go ahead.
We'll update the form with the DOLA and the satellite community gardens to include the basketball, and then it will also designate what parks were identified in the master park plan as optimal sites for that. And then we'll take cornhole and we'll add it to the other category as well. And then we'll update inclusive elements to say inclusive swing sets.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. So looks like with that, I think the subject 5 is done. Great. It's all old business. So new business. It's a blank. Director Joan, do you want to say something on new business? No. So there's nothing on the new business. So let's go to staff and commission reports, item number 6. Definitely I would like to hear from Director if you have anything else still keeping it with you, not to share with us go for it. Please go for it if you have anything. None at this point, right, Director? I think that's what I heard. Okay, you don't have anything. You just wanted to let us go. Please let me go. I need to have my dinner. Thank you. I see it. Let's hear from commissioners. Is there any commissioner reports? And if it is, please, you can raise your hand and then I'll allow. Looks like they're just following your footpath. That's awesome. That's great. So nothing else. And is there anything on the commissioner attendance on future meeting and events? I know we talked about the mayor meeting. Is there anything, Whitney, you wanted to highlight it? I know we were exchanging emails on mayor meeting was canceled in August and we wanted September. Do we have people identified, whatnot? Could you please?
We haven't identified yet. I believe the plan was to do a doodle. The only issue is that these meetings are changing with dates. So if we do commit to something, it might just have to be by month and not necessarily a specific date in the month because it's bound to change. So I'm not sure how you guys want to proceed with that. If you want to assign someone to the September meeting since it has a tentative date, or if you'd like to send out a doodle and have people assigned through the rest of the year per month with the anticipation that the dates could change.
But typically we do have that, what is it, the first Wednesday or whatever the specific day, right? It's still, maybe changes are okay, but is it not anymore? It changes all the time, every month now?
It's been bouncing around for the past few months.
Oh my, that's going to be hard for us to schedule. Okay, maybe if that is the case, I think it'll be better. I don't know whether people, they have to check their schedules and say how flexible I am. I don't know whether we can decide now. Maybe if it is okay, then we can do it on the email. You can ask people.
Let's just,
would that help?
Can I make a recommendation?
Please.
You know, when I came in, I didn't know if that was the process or what. We picked a month, and then if the date changes, we can always swap with another commissioner. So that way we at least have something in our calendar to plan for, as opposed to having to look at everything. So I think, you know, next, you know, we'll just do a round robin. We started, I don't remember who we started with. And if you just go around, and then if it doesn't work that month, we can swap with someone else.
Okay, I'm good for it. So maybe at least you need for next 1 or 2 months. That's all. Let's go with September. Who haven't attended it or who attended last, it'll be good to see it. Is there anyone think that you rarely seen the mayor now for a long time? It's time. It's good to see the mayor meeting.
So all I know is I saw it in June.
The next scheduled date is for September 2nd, tentatively. And I believe Commissioner Shu is the last commissioner to attend.
Okay. So maybe Commissioner Soshi, have you attended? If not, I can volunteer. June, you attended it. Okay, then I will volunteer for the next one. September. And then October, and I'm sure that either Commissioner Carroll or Nisha, at least we want to just choose 2. Maybe October.
Yeah, you can put me down for October. That's fine.
Excellent. Then by default, I think Commissioner Nisha will go to the next one. Great.
Yeah, you're going to confirm the date back to us?
They've been sending it out. I think it's about a couple weeks or maybe a week before. I'll get a message from the city manager's office, and then I'll reach out to the commissioners, to you and Gopal to confirm the dates and time.
Excellent. Thank you. This is awesome meeting. We had a very, very cheerful discussions and stuff. Thank you for staying so late, and a special thanks to Dr. Joanne. And you're learning a lot of things, and we are putting on a hotspot on many times, but for the right reason. So thank you. Thanks for doing it, Whitney, and again, all the folks who were there, Michael and Gail and Christine, giving us some more context every time. It helps. Otherwise, we may make some decisions based on what we know. But I think thanks for filling in. It really helped the entire meeting to go beautifully, smoothly. So great. Take care and stay safe. And I'll adjourn the meeting at 9:54. Have a great good night.
Awesome.
Throughout history, humankind has prevailed in our darkest moments, coming together to face the very thing that would extinguish